If you are able, please can I ask that you remain standing whilst my chaplain, Deacon Jim Cardy, offers prayers for this meeting.
Good evening. My red tie is not a political statement. It's because I'm singing in the community choir in just over an hour. And that's their uniform. I'll put that on there if I don't mind. We pray for our deceased council members, their families, and support staff as they face their first Christmas without their loved ones. We pray for those who will face the Christmas season with fear due to loneliness or financial hardships. We pray for the people of Ukraine who face Christmas and beyond with no water, heat, or light. We pray that we may all find some hope, peace, and joy in the next few weeks. And if I may be so bold as to make this prayer, come, Lord Jesus, God with us, the Christ child Saviour, come, sow seeds of hope into our family life, our communities. May the name of Jesus be a true blessing. May his name be alive in our hearts, rest easily on our lips, and transform the darkness with the vision of his light. And may I also, as it's coming up to Christmas, give you a blessing. We bless you all in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please be seated. Good evening, everyone. I will just run through some housekeeping prior to tonight's business. We are not expecting any fire drill. Therefore, if one sounds, please can you follow officers who will lead you to the nearest fire exit, where we will gather at an assembly point on Believe Square. Officers will assist members of the public who are in the gallery. Can I remind members of the need to respect each other, and I will continue to chair these meetings fairly and to show impartiality. Likewise, members of the public are welcome, but should be aware that they should not interrupt the proceedings, as disruption may result in removal from the public gallery. The rules of conduct for the meeting have been circulated in advance of the meeting, and copies are on your desks. Item 1 of the agenda, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies this evening from Councillor Collins, Councillor Draper, Councillor Ellis, Councillor Evans, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Gallagher, Councillor Harding, Councillor Hodgkinson, Councillor Holland, Councillor Hurst, Councillor Molyneux MBE, Councillor Parkinson, Councillor E. Rigby, Councillor Rotherham and Councillor Wakefield. Do we have any further apologies this evening, members? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Minutes held for the meeting held on the 28th of September 2022. I will move the minutes. I will move the acceptance of these as a correct record. Deputy Leader, do you wish to second?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Can I put the minutes to the vote? All those in favour of accepting the minutes, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The minutes of the meeting are accepted. Item 3, Mayor's announcements. Queen's Jubilee Tree of Trees. I would like to congratulate the Bridges for receiving the Queen's Jubilee Tree of Trees Award. Remembrance. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of those who took part in the remembrance services and parades across the borough. As always, the parades were very well attended. Meritorious Service Award. I am very pleased to announce that Gillian Birchall, our Armed Forces key worker, was recently awarded the Meritorious Service Award for services to armed forces by the Lord Lieutenant of Greater Manchester. Congratulations, Gillian. Finance Innovation Awards. I am delighted to announce that our Deputy Chief Executive, Paul McKevitt, has been awarded Public Finance Leader of the Year. This is a national award and is a great achievement for Paul and for the Council. Congratulations, Paul. Death of Building Services Officer Jeff Harrison. It is with great sadness that I refer to the sudden passing of Jeff Harrison, a senior building services officer who sadly passed away on the 8th of November 2022. Jeff worked for the council for 37 years and was a much valued employee and friend to many who started his career with the council as a gardener in the leisure department before joining the services team in 1991. Many of you will have known Jeff through his attendance at council meetings. He is greatly missed by his team and everyone who knew and worked with him. Death of Councillor Anthony Sykes. It is with deep regret that I refer to the death of Councillor Anthony Sykes on the 30th of September. Councillor Sykes was elected to the Ashton Ward in 2018. He was a member of the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Committee from 2018 until 2022, and he was also appointed a Vice Chairman of the Confident Council Scrutiny Committee in 2020. Councillor Sykes' funeral took place on the 18th of October, and he leaves behind his beloved wife Joanne, daughter Lucinda and son Chris. On behalf of the council, I have written to those closest to Anthony to extend the council's deepest sympathy for their sad loss that they have sustained. I believe that members of Anthony's family are present in the gallery tonight. Do any members wish to speak? Councillor Bullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for inviting me to speak. Anthony was my friend, my Labour colleague, and also, coincidentally, I suppose, my next-door neighbour. So short his life that was taken away. But, you know, there's so much to celebrate within that short life. People in Ashton were deeply shocked. But to a man and a woman, they all said, what a lovely man, what a kind person he was. And I'd just like to pay tribute to the close family because of the kindness and the courage and the love and the caring that they devoted to Anthony, looking after him and making sure that he could stay in his own home, which he loved very much. Lots of lovely memories to share. Anthony John Sykes, he was born in Haydock, but he had close links with Ashton because he actually attended St Edmund Arrowsmith Catholic High School. He went on there to Edgehill College, where he got his degree in science and environmental sciences, and then he went on to become a teacher. And he taught in Sutton Manor High School in St Helens. He was the president of the National Education Union, the NEU, the St Helens branch. And they had him lined up to actually be a worker for the union, you know, sort of days in school, but some days seconded out to work for the union. And, you know, he would have been brilliant at that job. He was a true negotiator. Joanne would probably say he could talk his way out of a paper bag, but it was brilliant for me because if I was getting a bit angsty, with some of our residents, I would be able to say, over to you on this one, Anthony. And when I rejoined him, it was usually all sorted out. And you may remember in this very chamber when he was actually a very new councillor, and he put us all right, didn't he, on some environmental issues. I'm not sure what the details were, to do with decarbonisation and fossil fuels and all this kind of thing, way above my head. But it was just a demonstration of the knowledge and the love that he had for the environment. And locally in Ashton, he famously dashed around on his Harley Davidson during the pandemic, delivering medicines and bits of shopping to our local residents who were always so grateful. He'd get a phone call from our local hub. I was stuck indoors during this time, and then I'd see or I'd hear the Harley Davidson going up our road, and he really wanted to be kind. That was the kind comment about Anthony. And sorry, I've just got to check my notes. Yeah. I also wanted to share with you, because Anthony was always suggesting that we reminisced and had a laugh about a Christmas event in Ashton. Anthony and I were on Ashton Market Square, and we got a harassed phone call from some of the volunteers who were down at Ashton Library. And what had happened was the community choir was set up on Ashton Library steps to sing before the switch on of the lights. But unfortunately, Santa's trailer had decided to park right next to the library. So there was a bit of a contretemps going on. So we dashed down there. Unfortunately, by the time we got there, it was a bit too late for Anthony's super negotiation skills, because one or two of the choir had picked up the music stands a little bit threateningly. So it all needed calming down. And the only thing we could do after trying a few conversations with them, we actually unplugged Santa. We put our gloves on, and you know where there's a tow vehicle at the front and then there's a trailer at the back sometimes? Well, we just had to go and unplug Santa. So I expect there were a few harsh words, but we couldn't hear them because by this time the community choir were full into Jingle Bells. So we got over it fairly well, really. But finally, and just seriously, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to talk about Anthony's work on Ashton Heath. Because of that love of the environment, Anthony got stuck in Ashton Heath. And I don't know if you know it, but actually Ashton Heath is a wild and very natural place. And I think it suited Anthony's personality. So one of our biodiversity officers and someone from Lancashire Wildlife Trust were advising us about which bits needed to be trimmed, which bits needed to be left, because the vision was to restore Ashton Heath to its former glory. A big task, but one that was, developing well. So I was really, really delighted when the other week I did have a phone call from our biodiversity officer, and he said, "You may not believe this, but guess what? One of the heathers that the heath was famous for, which must have been sort of dormant underground, there's a huge clump of all kinds of different heathers. I don't know anything about them, but they are a brilliant species, and they've been there a very long time. But one of them had, as I say, lay dormant. They wondered where it was. But this heather, I'm pleased to tell you, is now blooming on Ashton Heath. And I think that's probably the very best tribute to Anthony. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bullen. Councillor Steve Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually the councillor that got the lecture off Anthony Sykes for getting my facts wrong about the environment. I didn't know Councillor Sykes like Jenny did, but being a councillor in the town Ashton Makerfield, I can honestly say there was never a bad word said about Anthony. he was such a kind man. Anytime I've bumped into Anthony with something happening, he was always so supportive. Seemed like a gentleman who politics didn't mean much to. And it was really sad to see him, how he was at the count night. And I just want to say that my prayers are with his family, and he'll not be forgotten here in Wigan Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I associate myself with the comments of Councillor Bullen and Councillor Jones tonight? I actually got to know Anthony quite late on in terms of only knowing him for, some 6-7 years. And our paths crossed during the Brexit referendum because I found myself on the opposite side to Anthony. Anthony was a passionate supporter of the Leave campaign, and I was Remain. And I suspect he was more in touch with the minds of the great Wigan public than I was at that particular time, given the result. But during that time, we had many debates, not just about Brexit, but what I also found during those debates was what a great individual Anthony was, and how he clearly, logically had thought through much of the positions that he'd adopted. So it comes as no surprise to me that he was a wonderful local councillor, and I think both Councillor Bullen and Councillor Jones' comments attest to that fact. What I just wanted to say about Anthony is that, and Councillor Bullen touched on this with regards to his Harley Davidson. There was a side to Anthony that a number of members might not necessarily be aware of, and one of is that he was a fine musician, a very able guitarist, and I think he saw himself as a bit of a rock god. And we also found common endeavours there because I quite like music as well, and whilst Anthony particularly enjoyed music from the rock genre, he did have one little guilty secret that he shares with me, and that was his love of Duran Duran. We often used to bond over some of those songs. But latterly, he attended concerts with myself, with Councillor Blay, and also with Councillor Vickers. We found ourselves members of the Gary Newman Tribute Club. Often we went to see Gary, and one of my memories of Anthony is only earlier this year when Gary Newman toured. Despite the fact that he was in ill health, he still made the effort to attend with Joe at that concert. So I will miss Anthony terribly. I consider him to be a friend, and I consider him to be a wonderful human being, and he'll be sadly missed, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've heard from Councillor Bullen, Councillor Kenny and Councillor Jones about Anthony. Anthony, as Councillor Bullen said, was a teacher, and he was a well-loved teacher in his school. A lot of his pupils put messages on Facebook and that after his death, saying what a great teacher he was. So Anthony was only elected to the council in 2018, just 4 years ago. And very quickly became vice chair in 2020, like you say, of the Confident Council Scrutiny Committee. He was an extremely clever young man, and as Paul said, had a rationale and an analysis of situations. He was political, Steve. He was very political and a supporter of the Labour Party. And I remember him giving you the telling off and explaining to you about the environmental issues and all that at that meeting. So Anthony was a well-loved councillor in Ashton, and we've heard about him going out on his Harley Davidson, delivering food and parcels for people during the COVID. And he made a great contribution to the Labour group and to this council. And having only done 4 years, you just realise that had he not succumbed to his illness and died, what a great contribution he would have made to this council. And it's a sad loss, not only to the Labour group, but the whole council and to Ashton and Makerfield. So it's a very sad loss for this council, for the Labour group and everybody else, because he had the potential to really be an influential person within this council chamber for a significant amount of time. And so concerned was Anthony, even during towards the last days of his life. Earlier this year, he was communicating with me with issues around social care for people in his ward. You know, despite the fact that he was in an extremely ill situation and seriously ill. And so that says about his commitment to his constituents and everybody else. So it is a sad loss, and we will miss him tremendously. And Ashton and this council have lost somebody who could potentially have made a great contribution to this borough. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to ask all members who are able to stand for a minute's silence as a remark of respect for Councillor Anthony Sykes and for Jeff Harris. Thank you. Please be seated. Item 4 on the agenda, declarations of interest. The Monitoring Officer has provided advice to all members and relevant guidance had been issued. Members are asked to consider relevant interests for the purpose of this meeting, and if there are any interests declared, members must leave the room during the relevant item. Please fill out the form on your agenda and return it to Democratic Services officers at the end of the meeting. Item 5, updates from Cabinet portfolios holders. I now invite Cabinet portfolio holders to deliver their items.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Laura Flynn, Lead Member for Equalities and Domestic Abuse. 33 years ago yesterday, a man walked in to a mechanical engineering class in the École Polytechnique in Montreal with a gun. He told the women to stand to one side of the classroom and he ordered the men to leave. He shot all 9 women, killing 6. Before moving through the college, targeting only women and killing 8 more before killing himself. This horrific act of male violence against women was the catalyst for a group of men to set up the White Ribbon campaign. White to symbolise men giving up their arms. This has grown to be an international movement, and in the UK, the mission is, I quote, to prevent violence against women and girls by addressing its root causes, to change long-established and harmful attitudes, systems and behaviours around masculinity that perpetuate gender inequality and men's violence against women, to be preventative, to end violence before it starts. The White Ribbon campaign looks specifically to engage men and boys and encourage all to make the promise to never use, excuse, or remain silent about men's violence against women. The campaign works to make sure all men realise that they can take responsibility for thinking about their own actions. To promote equality and respect, and are to be prepared to call out harassing, sexist and violent behaviour when they see it in others. I thank almost all my fellow elected members for wearing the white ribbon tonight, and I know that almost all of them take responsibility for their own actions and call out violent behaviours towards women when demonstrated by friends and colleagues. Wigan Council marked White Ribbon Day on the 25th of November and has engaged in 16 days of activism since. But Madam Mayor, this is not virtue signalling. Wigan Council is investing time, effort and resources into tackling domestic abuse and violence against women and girls. We go above and beyond our statutory duty, and Wigan Council's approach to tackling domestic abuse is held up as best practice. We have invested in having more IDVAs, independent domestic violence advocates, than other local authorities. We have 9, including 1 specifically working with young people. There are further 2 IDVAs employed by WWL and based in hospitals, particularly serving A&E and maternity units. We have a dedicated borough helpline, the only council in Greater Manchester to offer this. An award-winning media and communications campaign, Love is Not Abuse, which was designed by those with lived experience of domestic abuse and targeting both victim survivors and perpetrators, both male and female, to recognise red flags in the behaviour of their friends, their partners and themselves. We have a specialist domestic abuse support offer in place for all victim survivors regardless of risk, and it also includes for professionals and concerned others and family members. Wigan Borough Domestic Abuse Service also offers a recovery programme, counselling, borough-wide training and awareness offers. We have daily MARAC meetings, which are multi-agency risk assessment conferences, bringing together many areas of the council, police, education and health professionals to look at specific cases, whereas the norm in other councils is once per week, fortnight or even monthly. This is truly a community-based approach. But this list is not exhaustive, and I want to highlight a particular area of Wigan Council's domestic abuse work, working with young people in schools, offering age-appropriate sessions for children on gender bias, personal freedom and expression. The importance of this preventative work is what the White Ribbon speaks of, changing behaviours and attitudes at a young age, educating future generations and challenging gender equality, ending violence before it starts. It's important children are presented with positive role models, including ourselves as local councillors. So I want to thank almost all my fellow elected members for joining the campaign and wearing the white ribbons tonight, and for the continued financial and political support that we as a council give to this vital work. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we come to the end of 2022, we can reflect on what has been an important year for environmental issues in our borough. It's been a year of both great challenges and great successes, as our environmental team continue to deliver those essential frontline services that our communities have come to expect and rely on. One of the most important lessons to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic was just how important good quality and accessible parks and open spaces are to local communities. If you cast your mind back a short time ago to when residents were only allowed to leave their properties to exercise for just 1 hour a day, our local parks became lifelines for physical and mental health for everyone who lived in the borough. So it's with real pride that I can confirm to Council this evening that once again we have been awarded 4 Green Flag Awards this year, which are a mark of excellence and represent the excellent way in which we manage our parks to benefit all. And on the theme of flying the flag, I'm delighted to learn that we have been awarded the prestigious Purple Flag Award for our nighttime economy in Wigan Town Centre. The award was the accumulation of several years of partnership between ourselves, the public and the private sector, and is a testament to the commitment that we have to strengthen our local economy
as part of our community wealth building agenda. Our environmental achievements this year were also recognised by judges who came to inspect our borough as part of the North Western Blooms Awards. And once again, we were awarded the prestigious title of Best Large City in the North West, as well as achieving an incredible 5 Royal Horticultural Society gold medals. Of course, we couldn't achieve any of these things, these fantastic awards, without our resolute army of volunteers. Over the last 12 months, we have provided thousands of litter pickers to residents who tirelessly work to help keep our borough clean. Litter and fly tipping costs the council £4 million a year, money which could be better spent in other areas. And it was very clear from the big listening project that our residents want a borough that is clean, well maintained, and they quite rightly believe that litter and fly tipping is a blight on our communities which we can ill afford. So our new litter prevention strategy sets out 7 key priorities to tackle this issue head on, including a high-profile, accessible and hard-hitting campaign to ensure that everyone knows that litter and fly tipping is not acceptable in our borough. The strategy includes measures such as closer working with our businesses, carrying out enforcement wherever and whenever that is required, and investment in our litter bin stock, ensuring that we have the right bins in the right places, make it convenient as possible for people to dispose of their litter responsibly. This year has also seen delivery of the second phase of the Our Town programme, which has seen improvements carried out in 25 district centres in the last 2 years. Over the last 6 months, our environment teams, supported by colleagues in PR, business engagement and the Deal for Communities team, have carried out deep cleansing exercises in 13 areas across the borough. These improvements include jet washing, refurbishment of lighting columns and guardrails, as well as refreshing road markings and signage. One of the more visual impacts of diverting frontline resources during the pandemic was an increase in weeds across the borough due to a lack of regular road sweeping and spraying, with those operatives who are having to be redeployed to other frontline services. The increase in weeds has had a detrimental impact on the appearance on the borough, so our Parks and Street Team are currently in the process of removing those weeds and detritus from all major routes throughout the borough, and the impact is clear for all to see. Turning now to transport, I greatly welcome the exciting prospect of the bus franchising scheme being introduced into this part of Greater Manchester from next year. The bus franchising scheme will ensure that local services are provided for the benefit of passengers and will be accountable to them for the first time in more than 35 years. Madam Mayor, I would like to say a little bit more, but obviously I'm running out of time. There's much more that I could point to in the environmental services that we have done, but I would recommend to members that on the next occasion I get to speak, I will carry on what I have to say. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. It probably follows on nicely to what Paul's been speaking about, and where Paul can make weeds and road markings sound exciting, I've probably got a bit of a job on me to try and follow that one. Madam Mayor, I want to talk about the exciting progress that we've got in development of 2 of our fantastic visitor destinations, Hay Hall and Pennington Flash. And I just thought it'd be interesting for people as we lead up to what is a strange world at the moment with not much happening and not much stability. In the past 7 months, well, in April to October this year, we had over 500,000 visitors to Hay. Just a reminder of how special the destination is and how valuable an asset it is to Borough. Work is underway, and the great news is that officers and members have resulted in a grant from the Heritage Lottery for £4 million, which has not been replicated anywhere in the country to that level, which unlocks £6 million for the restoration and the heritage on site, the plantation gates for people who know that, the Bothy cottages, and there's some exciting developments within the ancient woodland and wall gardens, which we're custodians of. In addition to the master plan, we've worked with residents and visitors at the Hall itself, and the plan to keep the Hall in public ownership and control is really at the forefront of everything that we do. This will become a regional visitor destination with national significance, with an annual economic value to this borough of in the region of £11 million, and that's been individually verified by external auditors. The council has committed £4 million to the external works of the building, but I want to make real kind of thanks to the Friends of Ayr and Ayr Friends, two different groups with two different designs on what we do, but they're fully behind what we do, and that's the reason that we've been so successful in our grants, is that we've all worked as a partnership moving forward and to guarantee that. Both the guaranteed heritage lottery bid for the Hall is there, we've got that, but what we're waiting for now is a levelling up fund, which really unlocks a lot of money for us and actually finishes that project. You will all know the instability of government at the moment, so we don't know how that's going to pan out, but we're hoping that people can see we've looked at it and our bid is seen as one of the strongest. We just hope that it's not played in the political field and that we can get that to move forward. We are also seeing a local firm, Lost Art, who's going to do the gates, so we're actually keeping that business within the borough and that community wealth building. We're also working with local landscapers who are going to do some horticultural work, and you'll see this when you go up there between the stables and actually the Hall, and there's some really exciting things going to be coming off there. And that's again with working with local people and people who really invest in what we've got there. Moving over to the east of the borough and the jewel in the crown, which we would call Pennington Flash, is now the gateway to the National Nature Reserve of Wigan and Lee Flashes, something that the Deputy Leader has been working very close with and other members in that area. There's a significant investment programme for Pennington, which people will see if they go up there, with naturally the new visitor centre, the cafe, and all the things that are happening up there. New facilities, CCTV, you name it, the new play area, something that Pennington has been crying out for a long, long time. And naturally the reaction from the people in Lee, they're loving this because it actually seems we're doing something at that side of the borough, and it really does do it. Also, Pennington Flash, and a lot of people might not know this, are working very closely with Lee Sportsfield, another successful organisation by this council, that will interlink in everything that we do. And I've got to say, it's all working fantastic. And one of the things that we sat down when we sat down with officers was kind of saying, we want this progress quickly. And just before I run out of time, one of the things that we did progress very quickly was the Youth Hub, working with Councillor Bullen and Councillor Gambles. And young people are now seeing that benefit already before we've even opened that facility, are using it. Another great facility for Lee. So there again, like Councillor Prescott said, I could say many more. I think we've got lots to be proud of in this borough, what we're achieving in the light of the economic situation that we're in. We will carry on doing that, and we can only do that within partnership with volunteers and residents of this borough who have backed us 100% to the hill. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Later on in the agenda, there's a couple of items, and I want to put a bit of context to those. There's the Housing Advisory Panel report and the rent setting, but there's been a question about the damp and the mould, etc., which is a national issue, so I'm just going to try and give a bit of context to some of that, if that's all right. But before I do, I'd like to put on record my thanks to all of the Housing Advisory Panel members, and particularly the ones that attended the last meeting, and making sure that we've actually met to decide the rents, but also the officers as well who support the Housing Advisory Panel for quite a bit of time. And I think really what's happened is that the Housing Advisory Panel we're actually put in a bit of a catch-22 situation because I think, as members may or may not know, the Housing Revenue Account is a fund that's ring-fenced, and all of the rents go into that Housing Revenue Account. And it's everything within that account and the budget has to go to the rented properties and the council's properties. And one of the things that we absolutely do take responsibility for, and are happy to do so, is making sure that our tenants are safe and comfortable. And part of the situations that happened recently, the Grenfell and the mould and the damp, is actually putting pressure on the Housing Revenue Account. We had a very long conversation at our housing advisory panel in respect of the rents and the impact it has, because we had to delay that meeting. We were waiting for directives from government, and they came forward and people mobilised very quickly in order to come to the meeting to discuss the level of rents that we may need to increase. Usually it's the actual way that we do increase the rents is it's to do with the the CPI, and it's also consumer index, plus 1%. Last year we actually didn't go to that level. We actually reduced. It was lower than that CPI. But this time, obviously, inflation is now 11.1%, and it's really difficult for everybody. And one of the things that we had to discuss is the funds that we need through the housing revenue account is quite significantly already targeted. We're needing to make sure that we're doing investment in our properties, making sure that people are safe and warm. The damp situation is an issue nationally, but one of the things that we've been doing since 2019 is actually referring this through the decent home standards that we have. We've done a housing needs assessment, but we've actually done a housing stock condition survey. So from 2019, we've already been moving forward on some of the things that we have to do, and that's including the damp and the mould. So there's, I think you may know we've got a letter from the Minister for Housing and Levelling Up asking about our situation from a damp perspective. We've been able to very robustly put information together to demonstrate how we're moving forward in making those properties more sound. So we're moving with that, but that's also taking up some of the funds from the housing revenue account. We also have to pay government 3.4 million a year. They made us take out a loan of 98 million. I think it was 2014, which is when we took the housing stock back. So that's actually going out of the housing revenue account without any investment taking place in any of our properties. We're trying to make sure from an investment perspective that we are trying to future-proof our properties. So putting in green energies to make sure that people are not spending on the bills. Part of the problem we also have is we've got quite a number of properties that are under-occupied with 4-bedroom houses, but we haven't got the actual properties to move them into, the 1-bedrooms. So we're needing to actually develop those so we can actually release the 4-bedrooms properties in order to move them across into the smaller units. So there's also all those kind of things that are taking place that's actually having an impact on the housing revenue account. And there needs to be enough funds in the budget in order to do what we want to do. Part of that is obviously to do with the Grenfell and the health and safety of our tower blocks, but also the damp and mould and the disrepairs and the repairs that we need to take place. So all of that has an impact on the level of funds that are available. I have to just very briefly say that one of the things that I'd say it in the word, we were in a catch-22 really on the HAP, and in the words of one of the tenant reps who was there, they said, reluctantly we will approve the rent increase as we have no choice. And that's exactly what's happened. There is no choice because we need to actually continue with our programme of works, our programme of investment, and making sure that our tenants are safe and warm and comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to talk about social care for a minute because we know and we hear in the press and the national press about the big issues in the health service and social care through basically the last 12 years of underfunding of the NHS and social care. A number of years ago, social care accounted for about 50% of this council's spending. Having had cuts of 160 million over the last 12 years, social care now accounts for 66% of our spending in the council. From a half to 2/3 of all our spend is on social care. A number of years ago, Barnet Council did what was called the Barnet Graph of Doom, which indicated that if austerity had continued in the way it was, that by 2025, every council would only be able to provide social care with the amount of funding it was receiving and getting. I mean, it's a bit longer now. I think we've managed to show it back a bit. But clearly, You know, we've had all these years of underfunding. Now, Wigan Council's not done too bad. We are one of the only councils that managed to bring in a balanced budget every year on social care, on adult social care, certainly. We've got all the pressures in children's social care, but on adult social care, we've managed to maintain the budget. And then, of course, Boris Johnson announced his social care fix and the £86,000 cap, which really wasn't a social care fix. It was about protecting the wealth of those people in the South East with their £500,000 houses. It was about that. It wasn't protecting the wealth of the average £160,000 property in Wigan. And so we've had this situation of the underfunding. This year, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, announced £2.8 billion extra for social care nationally. Although it wasn't really 2.8 billion, was it? Because 1.8 billion, or nearly two-thirds of that he was giving us, or not giving us, because he expects us to raise that through council tax. So of the 2.8 billion he's giving to social care, 1.8 billion is on the council taxpayers. So bear that in mind when we get to the budget meeting, that the Chancellor is assuming that 1.8 billion nationally will come from raising the council tax to 2% social care precept. The £1 billion that he's giving us is actually, they'd put in £1 billion for the social care cap that was coming in. Now, he's put that off for a few years, so that won't be coming in. But he's allowing us to keep the £1 billion, even though that £1 billion wouldn't have covered the cost of implementing the social care cap, which would have been about £3 billion. So councils would have had to sort that up as well. In 2020, the Health and Social Care Select Committee in the House of Commons determined and did an inquiry and a report on funding and workforce in health and social care. That indicated that by the end of this Parliament, which is 23-24 next year, social care would require annual investments of £7 billion a year. 7 billion. And that said, not to meet unmet need, not to improve access, but merely as a starting point around addressing the social care issues that we're facing, and probably followed by tens of billions. Who was the chair of this Health and Social Care Select Committee that determined social care needed 7 billion? Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, who this year has given us 2.8 million, but not give us that because we have to raise 1.8 billion ourselves across the local authorities. So more underfunding of health and social care from this government due to the economic crisis and collapse that they've brought about. Thank you.
Item 6 on the agenda, membership of outside bodies. The Council is requested to appoint a nominative trustee to the Standish United charity. Group leaders were contacted for nominations, and Councillor Ray Whittingham and Councillor Laura Flynn have been nominated. This report has been circulated to members via a supplementary in advance of this meeting, recommending that nominative trustees be appointed. I invite the Deputy Leader to move the recommendation to appoint a trustee.
Move the recommendation.
Is the recommendation seconded? Can I ask that as there are two nominations, that these are voted on? All those in favour of a... Sorry? Do you have 10 supporters for the named vote? Yeah, that's fine, thank you. So can I ask all those in favour of appointing Councillor Ray Whittingham, please vote now, please. All those in favour of appointing Councillor Laura Flynn, please vote. I declare that Councillor Laura Flynn be appointed as nominative trustee to the Standage United charity. Item 7 on the agenda, casual vacancy.
Owing to the death of Councillor Anthony Sykes on the 30th of September, there is a casual vacancy for the Ashton ward. The by-election will take place on the 15th of December and the count will take place at Wigan Town Hall. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Item 8. Annual report from the Chair of Audit Governance and Standards Committee 2021-22. The Council is requested to consider the report set out on page 21 of the agenda. The Council is requested to accept the annual report from Chair of Audit, Governance and Standards Committee. I invite the Deputy Leader to move the recommendations.
Move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Raymond?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, do you wish to sum up? All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The vote is carried. Annual Scrutiny Report. The Council is requested to consider the report set out on page 35 of the agenda. The Council is requested to accept the Annual Scrutiny Report. I invite the Deputy Leader to move the recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate? Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Raymond?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, do you wish to sum up?
No, thank you.
All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Do we have any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The vote is carried. Item 10 on the agenda, leisure memberships. The Council is requested to consider the report set out on page 61 of the agenda. This report is in response to a motion to full Council on the 8th of December 2021, submitted by Councillor James Watson. The report sets out the current membership offer to veterans. At its meeting on the 24th of November, Cabinet approved the recommendations set out in the report and included 2 further recommendations listed on your agenda on page 3. I invite the Deputy Leader to move the recommendations.
Move the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Second the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I reserve the right to speak later on.
Do any other members wish to contribute?
As an ex-forces myself, I think I would have to declare a prejudicial interest in this matter. I don't think it's appropriate that something that we as ex-service members could benefit for should be debating this issue. So I think it's appropriate, certainly for myself, and I'll leave that to the other ex-forces to leave the chamber whilst this is debated. Thank you.
I'll just check with legal, Councillor Hunt.
Firstly, if it is a prejudicial interest, there's no need to leave the chamber. You need to simply not participate. It's a matter for individuals to determine whether they believe that being a veteran amounts to a prejudicial interest. Having regard to the code of conduct, you have to decide whether a member of the public, knowing that information, will believe that would prejudice your voting or decision-making or contribution on this issue. I think we've had this position put before Chamber before, and on that occasion it was determined that being a veteran amounted to a personal but not prejudicial interest.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Let me remind this Chamber of the Armed Forces Covenant, which is legally binding and endorsed throughout the Greater Manchester Combined Authorities and was updated in July 2021. We, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, will uphold the key principles of the Armed Forces Covenant, which are: no member of the Armed Forces community should face disadvantage in the provision of public or commercial services compared to any other citizen. In some circumstances, special treatment may be appropriate, especially for the injured. Please note that I highlight the word disadvantage, as disadvantaging a member of the Armed Forces community is now deemed an unlawful act. Also, the legally binding executive summary of the statutory guidance of the Armed Forces Covenant Duty November 2022 that reinforces the Armed Forces Act of 2021, where it states that local authorities are responsible for providing local services in support of the Armed Forces Covenant, not national government. So there's 3 types of veterans. There's injured veterans who are currently at disadvantage because there's no local rehab facilities. There's those veterans who develop injuries over time post-service due to the stress, punishment and demands that service personnel put their bodies through. And then there's those veterans who can be recalled for up to 10 years post-service. How do we honour this social contract when we expect them to remain fit for duty, perhaps with a gym pass? Then there's full-time reservists who are not currently eligible for a free gym membership, unlike their full-time counterparts. What happened to the One Army offer? Then we must consider the NHS Veterans Aware June 2022 report that highlights that veterans are at a disadvantage more so than their civilian counterparts due to their increased risk of musculoskeletal injuries post-service. Furthermore, with little or no access to rehabilitation facilities, this puts our veterans community at a further disadvantage. It also recommends that all local authorities should provide gyms for rehabilitation purposes for our veterans. Now, I sat in the Cabinet meeting on the 24th of November in the gallery where this subject and the motion was raised. And what I witnessed was this council using veterans as a political football, that the leader should write to the Minister of Veterans Affairs supporting my recommendations, requesting that a national offer in relation to free gym memberships for serving and ex-forces personnel. Now, I fully support and agree with the leader on this, and this should be a prerequisite for all veterans. However, We are in control of our leisure facilities, not the national government. And what I witnessed was just nothing short of a political opportunity to attack national government to the detriment of the veterans within our own borough. Now, if this motion was passed, then the council would require a subsidy of less than £6,000 based on the current level of veteran memberships within our gyms. However, I was bemused to listen to the Cabinet's concerns about a huge influx of gym users and a lost opportunity to cash in on our veterans, hence the opportunity to ask national government to fund this venture when our neighbours at Bury Council already offer this for their veterans. This is nothing short of political tokenism at its very best. We have the opportunity and the power within this chamber to offer our veterans free gym passes, yet instead the Cabinet decided to blame the national government and blame the Tories for their own inaction rather than helping out our own veterans. Then we must acknowledge what Councillor Richard Gold, I need a drink of water. Sorry. Excuse me. Then we must acknowledge what Councillor Richard Gold, the Cabinet Member for Communities and Armed Forces Champion for Bury Council, said in December 2021. Bury has a long and proud military tradition, and by offering free memberships to our gyms is just one of the things we can do to help our veterans. Our armed forces defend our nation and keep us safe in the most dangerous of circumstances, and we have a moral obligation to ensure we look after them and their families on their return. Where did Bury Council get this idea from, I wonder? This very council. So if one council in Greater Manchester can do this for their veterans, then all councils in Greater Manchester should. Now, to finish with, let me remind all members in this chamber that it's the responsibility of the local authorities to provide services for our armed forces community, whose veterans are clearly at a disadvantage. And by ignoring my recommendations and motion to give veterans a free gym pass for our armed forces community shows a lack of respect and appreciation for our veterans' sacrifice, which I fundamentally believe is unlawful and utterly shameful. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hang on.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Jones.
Thank you, Madam. First of all, I just want to say how lucky the veterans are to have Councillor Watson here speaking on their behalf. Well done, Councillor Watson. And for the Cabinet, you should be utterly ashamed of yourselves. Absolutely, utterly ashamed. Every time you put a good suggestion forward, we'll stand up here and we will say we agree with you. We may criticise you, but when we fundamentally agree, I will always stand up here and say I agree. How you can say anything else but we agree with you, Councillor Watson, for £6,000 to play a political football is unbelievable. An absolute shame on you all. And you probably don't realise what you're actually doing. It's probably you've been in politics that long, the real life is leaving you. But just think of this little statistic. You are stopping the veterans going to the gyms for £6,000 out of a near £1 billion budget. Please let that sink in. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bob Braley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I totally agree. It's appalling when we've got 75 councillors here now, give £9 each. That covers it. That's the £6,000. And all our veterans who are not well can go to the gym. I'll give £9. I'll be willingly give £9. Just to everybody else to give £9. You know, it's only £9. It's not even a drink, is it? A tenner. You know what I mean? I think that should be passed as well. If everybody in here give £9, we can cover this bill of £6,000. 20. 20?
I think it's 100.
20 quid?
I think it's 100.
No. £7 is £7,000, isn't it?
750. 750.
Yeah. Oh, £20, whatever.
Councillor Braley.
£90 each?
£90.
£80? Well, I'll give 80 quid.
90.
90 quid, whatever. Certified out with no calculator. I need a calculator, don't we? So can we propose that? Can we, everybody give 100 quid? Make around 100 quid? You know, I'll give £100. What's £100 what you earn?
I'll put
I mean, what's 100 quid? I'll put £100 in. I'll put £100 in. Get it recorded. Let's get it paper. The press, we'll give £100. But get these veterans into a gym. Show you cabinet members up. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
No, that's not proposition, Councillor Hulton. Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Watson, for your passionate speech there. I have to put on record that I'm a veteran myself, and as you can see, not a user of the gym. But if we are going to use our veterans as a political football, as Councillor Watson said, and blame the government for not supporting our veterans, let's not forget it was Tony Blair and the Labour government that sent our armed forces to Kosovo, Afghan, and to the illegal war in Iraq, bankrupted this country along the way. Let me remind members of who steps in when there are floods, who stepped up through COVID, and who will be sacrificing their annual leave to cover the strikes over the Christmas period that the unions have called, so family and friends can actually see each other for the third year. In September 22, we had 13,847 members, a net gain from April 22 of 1,221, which equates to additional income of approximately 42,000 per month. This equates to over 500,000 per year in extra revenue, yet we cannot afford to subsidise less than 6,000 at our current veterans membership. So even if that was doubled, we still have a net gain. It's nothing short of disgraceful. Then there is the business approach to consider. People generally exercise in pairs, and this would be a loss leader and increase memberships further. So if I did have some kind of gumption to go to the gym, I'd take my wife. So you'd gain her membership, but not mine. Buy one, get one free, as they say. Referral from the NHS by the GM Active Rehabilitation Scheme receive free membership. What about those veterans with life-changing, debilitating injuries that are directly linked to this service? If we can provide this for patients referred to by the NHS, then it's no barrier for our veterans to have a free gym pass. This would also reduce the burden on the NHS services, yet again, saving the taxpayer money. Then there are the links to positive mental health and exercise to consider. In a recent study from Help for Heroes found that 85% of current veterans are suffering with their mental health. Yet again, free gym passes for veterans would help to reduce the demand on local service and be cost effective. If other councils are offering free gym passes like Bury, this means that one of two things. We are politicising the care of our veterans to attack national government, or we do not value our veterans' service on sacrifice, and I doubt anybody in this chamber doubts that. If this council is not adhering to the Armed Forces Covenant, then it should be stripped. You should be stripped to your covenant status. We need to look after our veterans. You know, not less than 4 weeks ago, we was all at Cenotaphs, we was all paying our respects and putting poppies on. And here we are, not more than 3 weeks later, when we could give them a Christmas present and say, you've got a free gym pass, there's your health, take your family with us, we'll get some money that way. And we've just left them to it. But we will write to the government. We do need a national campaign, not as well as local. So thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Edward Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Terrible with names. So I'm sure I speak for my entire group when I say that we absolutely support Councillor Gerard. and Councillor James Watson in what they've said. I don't know why you'd want to politicise this. Genuinely, it doesn't help anybody. I think it could come out of Brighter Boroughs. It's only £6 grand. That's a lot of money to people up there. But in this place where we're getting through the money that we do, it's not a lot of money. I'm more than happy to put that money from my Brighter Boroughs. I don't see why this is why are we debating this? Why are we debating this? This shouldn't be. This should be out of respect for the people that put their lives on the line for us. So let's face it, I ain't running away from anybody fast, am I? These people deserve our respect. Whatever Councillor Watson wants to do with this, I completely back him. If he wants to agree, I'll agree. If he objects, I'll oppose too. Whatever you want to do, just let us know. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Veterans and servicemen is always a very emotive issue. I've got to say, I've done many issues with Councillor Watson and Councillor Gerard, and I always try and find solutions to things, and that's why it's probably took so. But clearly, James, you must have been at a different cabinet meeting than I was, clearly, because one of the things I said was, let's not make this a political football. I said that. We once never blamed the government, because this is not a government issue. What we did say, and what the leader has done, is wrote to the minister to kind of say this should be a national scheme to look at veterans. Let's look at some of the facts, what people may not know on the opposition benches, what we already offer. So for serving forces, we offer free membership. So people coming back can use the gyms. I know I'm repeating this, James, and I know you know all this. We then extend that to 12 months when they leave the forces. We then offer a discounted scheme to them people. One of the things that I put forward at that meeting was, let's sit down as a working group with James, with Yvonne from the Armed Forces, with Keith who leads on it, and let's look at them issues around there. People keep quoting, and Bob's quoted all. He's very good at budgets, Bob, but not very good at reckoning up. But clearly, no, sorry, mate, I didn't interrupt you. You keep talking about the 19 veterans and the £7,000. Clearly, do you know what? If that was it, we wouldn't have a problem here. We have got a responsibility on this side of the chamber to hold up them budgets. There are 22,000 veterans in this borough, which every one of them, and you know and I know, once you publicise massively that there's free membership in gyms, whether it's pools, whether it's whatever, that runs into millions. And that's why we've got to be responsible about setting that. Would you guys all be sat there then and saying, were we going to cut this £8 million out of our budget to find that veterans? That's the extreme, but it will be a lot more than £7,000, and that's what we've got to look at. So I think people on the benches, and the press already know this, so you can quote to the press, we've wrote to the minister, there's lots of issues involved with illnesses that James has spoke about. Let's sit down and look at them, because they can be referred to the NHS. We can look at them budget, but we're not talking about £6,000–7,000 a year. We're talking about mega millions. It could be. We don't know, but it definitely will be more than that amount. And that's what we've got to look at. This side of the chamber, it'd be irresponsible to set that budget. And not once in cabinet meeting did we say, we'll blame the government for this, because this is something that's been brought up. But what I would like Councillor Alton to do, clearly supporting this, speak to the Tory minister and ask him to push that forward in government. That's your responsibility as a Tory councillor on this council to do that. Don't stand up here and say, let's all chuck a tenner in. You push your government to actually make this a national scheme, because that's where you are. We've got to be responsible at this side of the chamber on setting budgets. And when you go home and sit down at them facts, it's not £6,000. It's a lot of money. If it was, I'd be the first to say, let's do this. And I honestly believe all of us in this chamber do lots of work with veterans, and that's the first thing we do. Think about them budgets. Councillor Jones spoke about it. You've all spoke about it. Let's do this. Think about them figures, because that is reality, what it could be. And I don't know where we could cut budgets, but that would be interesting for you to come up with that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, would you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I get accused of making veterans political football, but it appears to me that there's only two groups in this council chamber that are making this a political football, and they're over there. The Tories at the back and the Tory light independents at the front. Councillor Reedy's identified, and Councillor Watson, when he was talking about the covenant and about not disadvantaging armed forces and armed forces veterans. But he's indicated that anybody serving in the armed forces has free membership when they return here in the gyms. And even when they leave the armed forces, they get 12 months free membership, and then they get a discounted rate. So we're not disadvantaging them, are we? The other thing that we said in the Cabinet was, actually, there's some value to what you're saying about free membership. And we asked the leader to write to Johnny Mercer, the Minister responsible for armed forces, to make this a national offer. So really, if you believe in what you're saying, you should be supporting that and pushing the Minister to allow that. But we didn't rule it out, and Councillor Reedy's indicated that at the moment there's 19 people benefiting from this scheme, and that costs 6,000. But potentially there's about 22,000. So clearly there's a cost. I mean, just making it free for those 19 people would cost 6,000. And Bob, if you want to make it free for them, and that's fine with you. But what about the other 21,990 odd members? So we talked about speaking to the Minister, writing to the Minister, asking it to be a national scheme, in which every authority across the country would be able to do it then. And the other thing is, we said we'd set up a working group to look at and explore ways in which we could perhaps do it, what other benefits we could give to armed forces veterans. And this council's invested a lot in armed forces veterans, in terms of the Armed Forces Hub and the work that that is doing with veterans across the borough. And so I'm not sure if Bury is investing the same amount in an Armed Forces Hub that Wigan is. So our commitment to the armed forces is clear. So I think the recommendations that are there, to include free membership for armed service veterans, 12 months when they come out, for armed forces serving armed forces, 12 months when they come out, to write to the Minister and to pursue.
Sorry, Councillor Cunliffe, we've got a point of order from Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. According to the 2021 census, there is currently 10,134 people in Wigan Borough that associate themselves as being an armed forces veteran.
All right, that cuts it down to a £4 million cost then. But within this recommendation, it clearly indicates we continue to give free membership to serving armed forces, 12 months free membership when they come out, and a discounted rate after that, that we seek to get this to be a national scheme, and that we set up a working group to see what possible alternatives we could offer. Now, that's not playing politics, that's trying to resolve an answer, that's giving people that benefit. The only people who are playing politics are this lot over here, the Tories and Tory line.
Okay, we need to go to the vote. So all those in favour of accepting the recommendations set out in the report? Any against? Do we have any abstentions? That vote is carried. Thank you. Item 11 on the agenda, Local Authority Governor's Report. The Council is requested to approve the nominations for Governor's vacancies and the reappointments set out on the report at page 71 of the agenda. I invite the Deputy Leader to move the recommendations.
Move the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
Second the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bullen, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
Reserve the right, thank you.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Bullen?
Nothing further, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, do you wish to sum up?
No, nothing further, Madam Mayor.
All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The vote is carried. Item 12 on the agenda, Treasury Management Half-Yearly Review. The Council is requested to consider the report set out at page 77 of the agenda. The Council is requested to approve the position on Treasury Management and the changes to the capital programme as appended and set out in the report. I invite the Deputy Leader to move the recommendations.
Move the recommendations.
Are the recommendations seconded? Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I reserve the right to speak later in the debate.
Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam. I may have been a bit harsh on that last one, so I'll hold judgment till we see where it goes. You may recall, about 3 months ago at the last meeting, I stood up here and I warned the leader that this council was crumbling. I've spoke about the debt that we was in. I spoke about the borrowing that we was in, how it had doubled over the last few years. And the leader stood up and said, as usual, Wigan is the best council in the country, to which you all stood up and clapped and made him out to be some type of saint for speaking such truths as if you all believed them. But then, what happened? 2 weeks later, the same leader was stood in the newspapers saying that for the first time in history, we're now dipping into our reserves. Now, it isn't that I'm some type of analytic in finances. It's obvious. We can see it with our own eyes. We can see the way the council's running. We can see the way the services are, that this council's struggling. Now, if we take a quick glance at the statistics, the finances, we can see that from this time last year, we had £191 million in reserves. It's been reported that we've dipped in 20 million. It's actually, in fact, 30 million. We actually have just over 160 million this year. And let me give you all a lesson in debt. If you have an income of £1,500 a month and your outgoings are £1,700, over a matter of a few months, you're going to spend all your money. And like so many other councils, you're going to go bankrupt. And that is why I stand here each meeting and I keep saying to the leader, I know it's not David's fault. I know it's not your fault. You know, we're councillors come from all sorts of backgrounds. But I keep saying this is why this council needs to get better people around it. Now, the statistics are there. I keep saying statistics. I'm a bit under the weather today. The numbers are there. £30 million. We cannot go. Imagine if we do that every single year. Within 5 years, we're going to have spent all our reserves. We're not going to have any money. Now, one of the big things that we've done this year is, once again, we've increased our borrowing to other councils. So last year it was £43 million. This year it's £50 million. So in times when we're being told that times are so hard, we go and borrow another £7 million in interest-free to other councils. So it's all here for you all. And I don't know if you read these reports. It's all here. Lists every single council. 5 million each to 10 councils. £50 million. Now, do you want, in times like this, to be borrowing councils £5 million? Why are we doing that? I cannot understand the logic behind it. Now, I've stood here and I've blamed the civil servants. I've stood here and I've blamed Cabinet. But how long can it go before you were all to blame? Not you, not us, because we stand up every meeting and question and say how bad this council's being run. But you all sit there. You never say a word, unless it's to boo us for speaking the truth. You clap when the leader says you're the best council in the country. Please, somebody tell me, what about Wigan Council is the best council in the country? That's my challenge for today. If one person can give me one answer to what is so good about Wigan Council. You've been debt. Well, the Treasurer, you're in debt. It's the £30 million. The leader didn't know it 3 months ago, but yet me, an independent, a plasterer from Wigan, knew better finances than the leader. And that isn't saying I'm good. That's unfortunately saying the knowledge on that side isn't very good at all. You cannot go £30 million into the reserves each year. Something needs to be done. Now, we can keep blaming the government. We can blame anybody we want. But you need to get better people around you. The money we're borrowing to other councils needs to stop. If we knew we was going into our reserves, why did we up our borrowing to other councils? You know, but a good idea, we can save some money by taking the phones out of the members' room. You must be joking me. I've been told the phone to the members' room, that's to save money. That's the type of idiotic policies this council comes up with. Let's tell you what, let's save some money. Let's scale back on councillors. Let's stop councillors being able to contact officers, so then there's not as much work to do. That's the ideology in this place. So I'm going to leave it at this. Please, this is my last warning. Please get better people advising you. Get the information to the Cabinet long before these meetings, so then 2 weeks later you don't have to go in the paper and say,
Jones.
thank you, Madam Mayor, exactly what I told you was going to happen. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for this opportunity to respond to Councillor Jones' question. Councillor Jones, you mentioned our reserves. Having £180 million reserves says a lot about this council's finances and how resilient we have been to have those reserves, because most of the local authorities across the country do not have those reserves. The £30 million pressure that you said, it is in some of our services, specifically children's services. That is not an issue that is unique to Wigan. That is a national issue, and everyone will know that that is at a crisis point. But we are not saying that we are out of the money. We are trying everything in our capacity to manage children's budget, and hopefully we will present another balanced budget this year, and we are going to use reserves. Using reserves to balance our budget is one of our Treasury approach, and you know it's not something that's exceptional, that's unique to Wigan. Every local authority has the right and the means to do that. You are questioning our debt. Our accounts are audited every year, and this question I answer in every council meeting. It's audited, and our Deputy Chief Executive has just won the Best National SIPFA Award for being the best treasurer across the country. So that says a lot about how we run our finances. So your allegations and your concerns, sorry, but they are not pertinent in this regard, in this situation, sorry.
Councillor Brealey, I can see that you requested to speak, but unfortunately, Councillor Raymond had already... It comes up on here exactly when you press, and it was after... OK, go ahead, Councillor Brealey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Right. Them figures what Councillor Jones referred to is here. Went back to 12 months ago, £191 million. December this year, 161 million. Press officer, David Mullineaux said we had to go into our reserves by 20 million. So where's the other £10 million? Where is it? It's here in the figures. Where is it? You know, Is he telling lies? For the first time in his life, is he going to tell lies? On record, in the press, big statement, £20 million. Well, he's telling lies, because the figures don't lie.
It's 30 on there, though.
30 on here. 30 on here. Sorry, Steve. Don't join in. Am I allowed to speak now? Right. Yeah. So, Councillor Reedy said £11 million being spent on it all. I don't think we need to get council tax off people because we're applying for funding all the time. You've got £11 million. So you can't say we, the council, is doing this when somebody's applied for the money. And fly tipping, Paul, £4 million on fly tipping. Well, tell these officers, like Paul Burton and Dave Lyons, to stop putting stupid sanctions when people go to them tips. You need your driving licence. Why do you need your driving licence for tip rubbish in? So they say, well, sorry, I'll go and dump it. And then we have to bring it back to our tip. And it's costing us £4 million. Something seriously needs to happen here. You know, you spend money like, hang on, I'll just pour it dirt grid here. That's what you spend money like. You've no idea how to balance the books. No idea whatsoever. And like I said, there's £161 million left in reserves, but yet you've got £600 million you borrowed. Now that tells me we're not in debt because you've got the money to spend. And it's an old saying, die in debt. And I'll tell you what, this council will be dying in debt. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, would you like to sum up?
Thank God the people of Wigan now must be thanking God that there's a Labour council here, because the economic competence shown by these men over here is abysmal. For years and years, for the last 10 years, they've been...
What's your point of order, Councillor Jones?
Breaching the rules, misleading council. Madam Mayor, that is a breach. Now you asked me to explain it.
It's not a point of order.
A point of order is if the rules have been broke. You've asked me what, so I'm telling you the rules have been broke.
Which rule is it that's been broken?
Misleading council.
Which rule is it?
Well, are you pleading guilty to misleading council? Yeah.
What's that, Keith?
I said, are you pleading guilty to misleading council?
Is he, Madam Mayor?
Please stop talking across the chamber.
I'll leave it at Madam Mayor. It's okay. If it was a point of order, it's not a point of order.
Councillor Cunliffe.
For years, these people opposite have been saying the councils are awash with money. You have hundreds of millions in reserves. You should be spending this to prop up services. That's what they've been telling us for years. Now they're telling us we have no money. We're in debt. We're 600 million in debt. Well, we're not 600 million in debt. Remember the explanation that the housing revenue account and the general fund are two separate accounts. The housing revenue account, rents go into that. You can't spend any money from the housing revenue account on general council tax. You can't spend any of the general fund that we raise through council tax.
Councillor Brearley, it's not a point of explanation, and please don't keep interrupting. You've had your opportunity to speak. Now, Council, it's not a point of order.
Can I keep starting me 5 minutes again? So the two separate accounts, the general account, you can't use general account for housing and you can't use the housing revenue account for the general fund. The majority of that borrowing of just over 400 million is in the housing revenue account. And that's around building council houses and developing council houses and all that. So a lot of the debt is on that. So it's about 300 million is debt on the housing revenue account. But remember what Councillor Gamble's told you earlier. In 2014, the government forced us to take out a £98 million loan to pay the government around the housing stock. So 98 million of that 300 million is actually a loan that the government made us take out and forced us to take out. But remember, virtually, I bet loads of people in this chamber are heavily in debt in terms of a mortgage. So although we've got that 300 million of debt on the housing revenue account, the value of our housing stock is approaching 700 to 800 million. So the debt on the general fund is about 130 million. Now, in that we spend about 900 million a year is the total council outgoings. That's a very low gear and low level of borrowing. And actually, that 300 in the housing revenue account, which is ring-fenced and is around housing, and don't forget, not only is the value of the housing 700-800 million, but we also receive rents every year into that, paying that off. So the debt on the council is about, on the council general fund, is about 130 million. But the assets of this council equate to about 1.7 billion. So in no way are we near bankruptcy, near huge debt and everything. But it's no point really explaining it to you, because your financial competence, I certainly would prefer, and I know, Steve, you're a plasterer, but I'd prefer Paul McKevitt's financial basis rather than a plasterer or a businessman from Inley. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the vote now. We're going to go to the vote now. All those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Any against? Do we have any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Item 13 on the agenda, HRA rent setting report. Can I remind members who are council house tenants that they will have a personal and prejudicial interest in this item, but they can stay in the meeting and vote. On pages 107 to 116 of the agenda, we have a report which was presented to the Housing Advisory Panel prior to being considered by Cabinet on the 24th of November. The report was also considered by the Confident Council Scrutiny Committee on the 28th of November. The Council is requested to agree the recommendations as set out on page 108 of the agenda. I invite the Deputy Leader to move the recommendations.
Move the recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Are the recommendations seconded?
I'll second the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
Reserve my right to speak later in the debate.
Do any other members wish to contribute? Councillor James Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 7% rent increase with a 3.1% last year. That's 10.1% in 13 months. We've currently got council tax arrears of 5.8 million. We've got rent arrears of 845,000. Fuel bills have trebled, food has increased, and no doubt council tax and the mayoral precept will increase in the coming months as well. So I'm going to quote Gordon Brown, who only this week said, "A year ago, we spoke about heating or eating. Now many can't afford either. With basics like soap and toothpaste are now becoming unaffordable luxuries." So I know this council likes to blame national government for everything, and I'm sure national government has got a hand and they have got a hand in the situation we're in. But we in this chamber also have the power to act, and we need to remind ourselves of that at a time. So the post-pandemic world requires a post-pandemic strategy, and this includes the HRA accounts. So I just ask everybody to think about the pensioners. Think about the 80% of families in universal credits who simply just cannot afford this. Now, Andy, our good friend Andy Burnham said this week also that this winter with the cost of living, it's even more important that we take care of ourselves and help each other over the next coming months. Now, this 10.1% increase over 13 months, it's not helping anyone, and it's just too much. Now, in the blessing at the start of this meeting, you know, we were told to pray for the people in Ukraine, who many will be without power and heating this winter. I say no, we should be praying for them. We should be praying for our own residents, who many of them in this borough will find themselves in the same situation of those poor souls in Ukraine, unavailable to heat and have power in their own homes, which is an absolute disgrace. So this council and its Be Kind motto, you know, is definitely for me, for the few, and not for the many, which is why I will not be supporting this. And also, I would like to request a recorded vote on this, so we can be held accountable in this chamber for our actions and putting the social rents up for our most vulnerable in all our communities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam. Just to mirror what Councillor Watson said, although I think it does go back to what we've just been on about, the finance of this council. We're taking drastic measures and you're making unpopular decisions. And there is one thing Councillor Reedy said that I do actually agree with. On your side, you do have to make tougher decisions. We can criticise more. But 7.5% of the rents, how much difference will that make to the overall picture? And again, like Councillor Watson said, we're taking money off some of the most vulnerable people here. So I am 100% against it. And just in finishing, the Deputy Leader can make whatever remarks he wants about me and personal matters, but it will not intimidate me from speaking my mind in this chamber. That I'll make perfectly clear to you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Edward Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Up you go, fella. It's very unfortunate that we've gone through a financial crisis in the middle of a war, and we had a lockdown, and it's a hell of a situation, isn't it? That the government said, no, you can't have an 8 or 9% rise, you've got to stick to a 7% rise, which is still very expensive, but it's difficult for everybody, and everybody is feeling an awful lot of pain at the moment with an increase in bills. The government, from what I understand, accepts that this is kind of a one-off situation, and everybody is, as I said, everybody is going to feel pain. I think the important thing is that we look after the most vulnerable people. It's all very funny to insult each other across this room. Very amusing, in fact. But I think the important thing is to care for our most vulnerable. And if we do have to have a 7% increase, and it's already been, well, let's face it, you're all going to vote in favour of it, then maybe you can fix some of the mould issues on Highfield Estate. Some of the damp. Perhaps you could do that. I had a lady a few years ago who contacted me after 18 months because the council wouldn't fix a door. When it blew windy, the door blew open with the wind. And what I mean is when she went to bed, she was in a wheelchair, when she went to bed, they couldn't keep the door locked. And I had to step in and I had to force the council to actually fix it so that it locked. Perhaps if we could work towards those things and not insult each other every 5 minutes, but care for people. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brearley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we need to look at some of these contractors. Instead of putting our rents up, we need to look at what these contractors are doing for us. The prices I've seen on these and recorded over £500. I saw 8 invoices last year going to a contractor doing our repairs, and everyone was the same. 136,856 and 85p. Now that's 10 invoices exactly the same. No, they can't do that. That's impossible, that. But do 10 invoices exactly the same. And it's things like that we need to look at. Why is it when somebody leaves a house, they go in, the contractors go in, they assess the work, they give the work to themselves, and then they do the work and then sign the work off? When do we actually look at what we are paying for, which will affect rents? The overheads, the cost of running a council house, it must be tremendous when you've got contractors assessing the work, what needs doing, and we are not involved. That's a serious issue, that. What really needs to be addressed. And we don't need contractors. Why do we employ our own people? You'll get rid of that standing charge for going out, which a few years ago was tremendous. I don't know what it is now. I've never looked into it. But a few years ago, it was like 60 quid for a standard call-out charge. Well, it was only £60 a week rent. So it just come out, your rent's gone. So where does your revenue come then from for repair that house when you're paying the council house rent for a call-out charge? There's a lot of stuff you need to look at. But we're not allowed on these committees. We're always outvoted by Labour. Labour's the best. And I'll tell you what, Keith, I was insulted when you said independent Tory. I'm not an independent Tory, but I believe in common sense, mate. A lot of common sense. And there's a lot of failings in this council. And you've already got rid of one 4 years ago. And you should be getting rid of a few other people in this chamber. I'm telling you that for nothing. Thank you.
Councillor Gambles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing this to speak. I'll just pick up on Councillor Brearley's point about not being represented. You have a representation on the Housing Advisory Panel. So you've got Councillor Wilkinson is actually on the Housing Advisory Panel. She is your representative, but I don't believe that she was at the last meeting. But she has all the papers and should be able to share those with you. And I think, unfortunately, Councillor Watson, you left the chamber a little bit too early when it was the Cabinet, because we did actually discuss the rents. So you might have actually got some more information in respect of why we're having to put the rents up to 7%. You can imagine it was extremely difficult for the Housing Advisory Panel to discuss that. We don't want to put the rents up 7%. The choice is we will not be doing the jobs that we need to do if we don't have the 7%. It's not actually we're going to be treading water as a local authority and as a housing provider. Our responsibility as a social housing landlord is to make sure that we're keeping people safe, warm and comfortable. And the 7% has to be brought in. You can imagine, even at our Labour group, we had difficulty with that. We don't want to put the rents up. We need to actually make sure that we're actually reaching the cost of living. The cost of living is actually, it's now 11, it's rampant. 11.1%, probably more. We're talking about actually getting workmen in and the materials. The material costs are rocketing. They're more than 11%. You'll know yourselves. You've gone into the supermarket. There's things that's 20, 30, 40% more than they were when you went in. Getting hold of workmen to come and do the work is difficult as well, which is delayed stuff. So there's all of that going on as well. The actual tenants and residents that were actually at that meeting at the Housing Advisory Panel found it really difficult, but they were the ones who were the most pragmatic about it, recognising that we need to do this in order to make sure that we can do the jobs that we have to do as a local authority. And Councillor Hulton, you mentioned about the vulnerable. The vulnerable we also need to think of are also our residents and also our responsibility, the people who are actually in the private sector renting. What are they paying at the moment? If you're actually in a small one bed, they're paying £1,200 more than we are as a council tenant. If you're in a 4-bed, you're actually paying nearly £6,000 more in order to actually have that property on a private rented sector. They are also not being asked to be capping their rents as well. They're also not being actually asked about the damp and mould and what repairs they're doing. They can actually get away with it if they're saying that it will cost too much to put the property back into a state of repair as a private landlord and say we can't afford it, and they get exempt. What's all that about? You've obviously said it's obviously a terrible property to live in, so we need to actually protect those vulnerable, and we are doing as a council. We are making sure we're getting ethical landlords. We are making sure we're knocking on doors, making sure that people are aware of the damp and mould and responsibility. There's been an increase in the amount of illegal evictions. Since the damp and mould situation came up after the Conor Innes report, there's a number of illegal evictions taking place and landlords are disappearing. Then we have to pick up those pieces. We have to pick up all those pieces as an authority because of the homelessness side. So it's the ratepayer that's paying, not the private landlord, not the government, no one else. We're picking it up. So all of that is actually linked back to what we're having to do. And I know that you recognise, Councillor Hulton, thank you, about the need to put it up to 7%. We don't have a choice. We do not have a choice. And it's something that's heartbreaking for us all. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're making sure we're doing all those repairs that need to be done, that get rid of those damp and mould in the properties that we have it. We also need to build, as we've said before, in respect of providing the right type of accommodation so we can get more people out of the larger properties that they don't want to be in. It's too expensive for them to heat in any event. Get them into the one-bedroom properties and make sure that we've got families available to go into those properties. And it's not just the right to buy that's actually causing the issue, it's the private sector. People cannot afford to live in the private sector, so naturally they are coming back on our waiting list. We want to provide as much accommodation as we possibly can, and that's also bringing the rents in. So thank you for your listening and thank you for your time.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to touch on a few things. First, I've set out my stall. I fully understand why you want to raise rent and service charges and garage rents to make repairs. But, as Councillor Briley said earlier, we've got to manage our money, what we get from this income, a little bit better. I've seen, and other councillors here, we can't just be just on this side of the chamber who you see it. Waste after waste. I've even had jobs where we've been charged for a job that's not even been taking place. We've had to have them out again. You know, and this was in an old person's flat. It's just disgraceful. We need to start inspecting these jobs these contracts are doing because they're taking us to town at the moment. And we need to get savvy with the money that we're spending on these contractors. In the report, it says currently 80% of tenants are in receipt of full or partial housing benefits. So it's basically saying that this will have no effect on 80% of the tenants, the 7% raise. So that leaves them who are just above the threshold taking all the burden of the 7% pay rise. What have we got in place when, come April, that they're going to be feeling the strain? If they're not feeling it already, they definitely will come March, April time. Now, garage rents, yeah, gloss over that. But the service charges is one that really gets me going when I read it. Because for time, the last 4 years, I've been trying to get the communal areas in flats, on Bolton, in different areas in Atherton, cleaned and up to a certain standard. And it's hard to do in some of the flats. I can understand that with the people that are in there. But they've not seen, some of them floors haven't seen them up in 4 or 5 years. But we're charging people for it. So we need to start making sure, if we're going to charge people for this kind of raise, they actually get what they're paying for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond, do you wish to...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think most of the things that I wanted to say, Councillor Gambles has already said, but I would echo that no doubt it was a very, very difficult decision to actually put this rent rise up. But Madam Mayor, can I just put everything into context, please? So we were forced from 2015 for a consecutive 4 years to actually give 1% reduction in social housing rent. That has costed us about £30 million, and that was a huge burden on our housing revenue account. Madam Mayor, we've got more than 13,000 people on our housing waiting list, and this Labour group, we are committed to provide every one of them with a decent and respectable housing. Madam Mayor, we have an ambitious social housing plan, and to replenish the stock and to make those repairs, we need that money. Madam Mayor, we have a generous welfare offer that Councillor Gerard, you are talking about the financial difficulties that our tenants will be facing when comes April. We have a very generous welfare offer, and we are encouraging more and more people to actually avail that offer if they are falling in debt or if they are facing any other financial difficulties. And Madam Mayor, can I just highlight the recent unfortunate, very, very unfortunate case in Rochdale of Awab, a child called Isaac Awab, that has highlighted a deep-rooted problem in our housing nationally. And what is government doing? Government is trying to put and transfer all the blames to local authorities. Government hasn't pledged any more resources or money, so it falls down on shoulders of local authorities to actually deal with that. So we have to, there has to be some resource to actually cater for all those problems that will be exposed more and more after the unfortunate case in Rochdale. And Madam Mayor, if you go back to tenants, they would rather have better housing than long-term health issues and substandard living. So thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you. Deputy Leader, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So clearly it's been identified that, you know, we wouldn't by choice be putting a 7% rent increase on people, but we're being forced to by the government. It was this government who brought in a formula for determining rents and rent rises, which was the rate of inflation plus 1%. And so over a number of years, and certainly in the last few years, we haven't been to the maximum, recognising the difficulty people are in. We haven't even been to the maximum. But if you think about it, inflation plus 1%, this year, September inflation was 10.1%. Technically, the rent rise should have been 11.1%, according to the government formula, because we have to pay for increased wages, material and building costs, and all that. Later on, there's a motion on the agenda about us reviewing, as a result of the Rochdale case, having an urgent review of our housing and facilitating and repairing those damp and mould that is existing. And we've already got that underway, but that is going to cost money. So in actual fact, having a cap of 7% on the rents this year, with inflation at now 11%, is equivalent of a 4% cut in our housing. That's bearing in mind the 1% cuts we had several years ago that cost us £30 million. So really, the government leave us no option but have forced us, and will force virtually every authority to raise its rents by 7%. Because you just cannot provide the services, deal with disrepair, deal with the issues in the damp and mould, and also start to provide new housing, specialist housing, new housing for the 13,000 people on the waiting list. And it's interesting that they haven't put these demands on the private sector landlords, because their rents are going up more than 7%. Private sector housing rental is probably going up 10, 20, 30% even. And do we care for the people of Wigan? Well, I can tell you this. In Greater Manchester, council tenants in Wigan will be paying less rent than any other authority in Greater Manchester. Council taxpayers in Wigan will be paying less council tax than any other area in Greater Manchester. So a council tenant here paying council tax pays less than they would anywhere else and pays less rent than they did anywhere else. And that's because we care about keeping as much of the costs down to those people in the private. And plus, as indicated, the welfare payments around those people that Councillor Gerard identifies as just above the line. We're improving the welfare support to those people during this period. Now, you know, people say, oh, well, some people have said about my accusations of Tory light, but I just feel that the independents here attack Labour all the time. Did they attack the Tory government for taking 160 million off this council? Did they attack the Tory government? Never. They never attack the Tory government, so vote independent, get a Tory.
We'll go into the vote. Councillor Brealey, Councillor Brealey, it is not a point of explanation. It's not a point of explanation. Right. Councillor Brealey, we are going to go to the vote now. Councillor Watson has asked for a named vote. So can I do you have 10 people who want the named vote, please? Okay, so all those in favour of accepting the recommendations as set out in the report? Use your electronic voting, please. Any against? And abstentions. That vote has been carried. Thank you. Item 14 on the agenda, questions and comments. Councillor Jones wishes to ask a question. Councillor Jones.
Just ask it to the Deputy Leader.
Just ask the question, and in the absence of the leader, there will be a response this evening.
If at any point a government's review is triggered by a group looking to set up a town/parish council in which the council hold a referendum, can the Deputy Leader confirm that going forward, only the area looking to become the town/parish council is given the vote, and this vote will be honoured with no exemptions?
Can I assure Councillor Jones that in the event of a governance review in any part of this borough, that this council can carry out its statutory obligations in the statute that's laid down for this process to take place?
Councillor Gerard wishes to ask a question. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to the Deputy Leader. In Atherton, we used to have 4 bus services to Manchester. Does someone want to join in then or something? Or? No, there used to be 4 bus services to Manchester, quite regular. Then the Guardian Busway came along, then we had the V2, which proved quite successful, which it would do if you take 4 bus services off. So during COVID, there was obviously no need for the bus to be running as regularly as it were, so they decided to have a shuttle service, which we reluctantly accepted. But now, everything's getting back to normal. There's only is still a shuttle service from Atherton to Tilsley, which is the next town along, and it's not good enough. There's people waiting for buses in Tilsley, buses going flying by, same in Manchester coming back. And basically the question is, Keith, seeing as Andy Burnham's franchising scheme is going, and this is his flagship service, would you support my campaign and as well as Council Wales, who's campaigning as well, about getting the V2 back to a full serviceable timetable, Monday to Sunday? That's it, basically.
Well, thanks, Stuart. I did speak to the leader about this before he went away, and I can assure you that the leader is throwing his support behind that campaign. And in fact, the Labour representatives on the TFGM have raised this issue, pushing this issue, and also it's been pushed by Joanna's pushed this at GMCA as well. So definitely the Labour group, the Labour Council, our representatives at GM on TFGM and GMCA are all pushing this, and we support the campaign to bring back the V2. I just think it's interesting that that you're moving this, because I think the Atherton Independents were big opponents of the guided busway. In fact, I think your leader, Norman Bradbury, your leader at the time called it the misguided busway, Norman Bradbury. So I'm glad to see that you're a big supporter now of the guided busway and demanding increased provision. And we support you in that, about getting that campaign to get the V2 bus back. So I'm glad you converted to the guided busway now and recognise what a great success it's been.
Thank you. Item 15, notice of motion. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Edward Hulton, which is set out on page 123 of the agenda. Councillor Hulton.
If you insist, Madam Mayor. I have a singular wit, it's all right. So, first of all, I think there's an issue here, Madam Mayor, between what Wigan Council say is a consultation and what the law says a consultation is. Because never the twain shall meet, apparently. So, a consultation to most people, including the law, is if we can do a thing. And your consultation is, we're going to do this, let's figure out how to do it. So I don't see how it can be a fair consultation for the access road works on the East Lancs in Lowton, because you didn't hold a consultation that anybody accepts was realistic in the first place. Now, it's very simple. It's an unbelievably dangerous situation. I was out there a few weeks ago with Mother, measuring the road, and several cars came screaming past us through a no entry sign, and almost ploughed us down. Now, as amusing as that would have been for you, I'm sure the people that live there, that have to deal with it on a daily basis, are not overly happy. We've been asking for years that the service road be blocked so that cars can't come through that road, and I was always told, and Councillor Kath Hilton was always told, that you can't do that because the road has to be left there, and for a reasonable reason, let's be honest, so that emergency vehicles can get past that junction if there's an accident. So now the council is proposing to reduce that by several metres, 3? 1.5, leaving 3 metres. That's right. So there'll be 3 metres left, which isn't really enough to get a bin truck down there with other cars that are parked there. And there's also the question of the council wants to make it into a one-way system, which, I mean, I'm not as young as I used to be. I don't want to drive fast anymore, but if you look at, picture it in your mind, you've got the East Lancs where everybody's going as fast as they can apparently, and this little road that comes off. So if you want to go home, if it's a one-way system that way, you've got to fly off into a really narrow road and come to a screeching stop. And then if it's not that way, if it's the other way, you have to come out of the junction, come into the road, and then you have to exit onto the East Lancs with people driving like lunatics past there. So what I'm saying is it would make it really, really dangerous and unreasonable. I would ask that this be taken back to Cabinet and have a more erudite approach to this situation, shall we say. There are several schemes that the local residents actually agree on that they want, that this money could be put towards. No talking in class. I don't see how you can do this safely. However, the motion is we ask for a reasonable and open and honest consultation. As I said, I don't see how you can do that. So I would ask for the Deputy Leader, if at all possible, to think about, as I said, taking this back to Cabinet. And I'm more than happy to arrange, there you go, I'm more than happy to arrange meetings with the local residents that live there for officers and hopefully himself to attend. I'm happy to arrange meetings with all the local groups that have an interest in that. I will do anything I can to facilitate the council and the local community. But yeah, I'd ask that you take this off the table if you think it's reasonable, because I see no way you could have a fair consultation. I don't see how you can have a fair consultation, Madam Mayor, on this. Everything about it is dangerous. There's actually a business there, and they have to take a very large horse box in. So as it swings round to drive in, the back end of it just goes over the East Lancs. So if we take a metre or two off that entire back end is going to swing out over a new lane. Now apparently officers are aware of that and they still want to push forward with it. It's a danger to life. It's simply going to be a danger to life if this progresses. So again, I would ask the leader, Deputy Leader, and I know he's like an omniscient baby in a toga circulating the planet with all his wise thoughts, but I would ask that he would put his ideas this way, if he can't be bothered to look at me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holton. Is this motion seconded?
Seconded it, Madam Mayor. I'm second, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Holton.
I'm second, sorry.
Thank you. Scott?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry for the interruption.
Sorry, Councillor Prescott. Councillor Holton, I just need to ask her a question, if that's okay.
No problem.
Is it? Yeah. Do you wish to speak now, Councillor Holton, or reserve your right to speak? Thank you. Right, Councillor Prescott, sorry about that.
That's okay. I feel a bit like a jack-in-the-box this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to reply to the motion. I firstly underline that consultations conducted in this borough are always carried out in an open and transparent way, which is open to scrutiny by our scrutiny committee should people wish to do so. With regard to the motion before us tonight, I can inform members that a public consultation was carried out in Goulburn and Loughton from the 8th to the 23rd of March 2021 to seek views from local community on how the Section 106 funding secured from recent house building in the area could be best used effectively to mitigate any impacts of on local infrastructure. The public consultation sought to engage with local communities and all key stakeholders. The consultation consisted of a 4-page survey comprising of 15 questions designed to gauge opinion, and the questions focused on the key themes of improving traffic flow and reducing congestion, community provision, cycling, walking, and open space and play provision. It also included a list of viable schemes that could be taken forward, informed by local research, traffic modelling, and regular discussions and engagement with local ward councillors and representatives from the local community groups. The survey was widely publicised and distributed by the council as follows. A paper survey was posted to all addresses in Goulburn and Loughton Westward, including a free post return envelope. Paper surveys could also be returned to the SDF Hub at Ashton Library, and it could be completed online. It was publicised regularly on social media, including Twitter and Facebook feeds. Supporting information on the schemes identified in the survey were also made available on the council's website, and it was also publicised extensively by local community groups, and I am reliably informed by ward councillors. Further to the consultation process, which continues, as there will be a further consultation period which will be an important opportunity for people to understand and influence the detail of the scheme and how it will be delivered. It has already been explained in other meetings that before this next stage of consultation takes place, that there will be a need for further on-site surveys and further detailed design work. I can't actually give a time frame for that at this moment. So, Madam Mayor, what part of that extensive and in-depth period of consultation I've just described fails to meet the standards of openness and transparency that apparently prompted the motion that we have before us tonight? Well, the answer is clear in my mind. This is not a motion of any purpose or value, other than a thinly veiled attempt to seek to bring the good name of the council, of which we are all members, into disrepute, and to support it would meet that purpose and that aim, which I personally find reprehensible. So, Madam Mayor, I will not be supporting this motion, and I would hope that members see the motion for what it is and not support it, because by doing so, you would be facilitating its true purpose. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cleeve.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. We did have a rather in-depth public consultation, and then there was a meeting drawn up for the 6 ward councillors, for the 3 Loughton East councillors, the 3 Goulburn, Loughton West councillors. Councillor Eddleton wasn't at that meeting, he didn't come. Once the schemes were designed and proposed, they was all laid out in front of us and then narrowed down due to costs on what we could do. The concerns were raised about the service road for Loughton, and the officers assured us that every single resident on that service road would get a personal knock on the door from our officers of that council that they could again discuss and put forward their concerns, and they would be looked at before these proposals were taken any further. So I won't be able to support the motion either, Councillor Prescott. Thank you.
Councillor Kath Hulton, as you deserve, would you like to speak? Would you like to now speak on the motion?
I would like to speak now on the motion. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Right, now I wasn't going to say this, but as soon as you brought the disrepute of this council interview, I shall say that part of this motion is to take away and extend what's the word? The what? Oh, for God's sake, what, tell me. You just said that we are just bringing this to put in disrepute. I am trying to raise the repute of this council. For a start, the consultation, the survey went out to thousands. There are 20 houses that are immediately affected by this proposal. Thousands are coming down the East Lancs Road every day. They don't go there, they don't live there, they don't have it. Again, this proposal was put forward to alleviate the traffic from the new housing estates. The new housing estates do not come onto the East Lancs Road, they come down Newton Road to cross the East Lancs Road. So that money is just going to be totally wasted because that does not apply. As far as trying to save money, the only proposal that was actually wanted was to put traffic lights with the roundabout on Goban Island, and that was thrown out. And I'm sure Councillor Cleave admitted, and I think it was also, was it Gina? She said that's the only one that we wanted, and that was turned down, and that was to save £1.5 million because that's how much they wanted to get rid of the roundabout. £700,000 is going to be wasted making a road 3 lanes that's never clogged. Over £1 million is going to be spent on this service road that's going to be reduced, bringing traffic closer to houses, making the road narrower. Not all of the houses have got driveways, so they have to park on the road and on the path. And can you imagine cars screaming down to get to the traffic lights and turn, when they can't, it's not going to be wide enough, to get a fire engine down, the dust cart, or anything else that's going to come past. It's an absolute disgrace, and it needs and what's even worse, this programme was put together by Greater Manchester Transport. They never came down to look at it. Cabinet passed this and didn't even know. Now they're going to look at it for the safety aspect. And at this meeting that Councillor Cleave said that we're all at, and we kept saying to the 2 poor officers that were there that got no power at all to say yes or no, instead of a cabinet minister with some power to say, we kept saying, when this is decided that it's no blooming safety, will you change your mind? And they couldn't say yes or they couldn't say no. They were put in an unenviable position. And to actually pass something without knowing about it, the safety standards, well, it's a disgrace. And I fully approve this motion, and I hope everybody that's got people's safety in mind will approve it too. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Edward Hulton, would you like to sum up on the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Caff. That was exactly what I should have said, really. I think this is the point. It's not a political point. It's a mistake, clearly a mistake on the part of this council. The only people bringing this council into disrepute are those people pushing this forward, Paul. It's very simple. I've put a motion forward that the consultation will be open and honest, and you all seem to want to vote against that, which means you don't want an open and honest consultation. Okay, you vote that way. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul, you can't. We're done now. Jump in.
What's the point of order?
Point of order is misrepresentation. What I was trying to say in my response to the motion, Madam Mayor, was that the principle of the motion itself was based that consultation, the consultation...
Councillor Prescott, it's not a point of order.
It's okay, because I've said it.
No, Councillor, I think you're wrong.
Councillor Hulton, sorry about that. Do you want to continue, please?
No, I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to protect the lives of people that live in 15 or 20 houses in my ward. I apologise if that offends anybody, but it's actually my responsibility to try and protect people in this borough. When I speak for 330,000 people. And I try and do that sarcastically, but with honour, respect and decency. I don't hide behind big words and platitudes. I just tell people how I see it. Generally speaking, people enjoy that. People prefer me to be honest. But it's outrageous that I'm being accused of this. I'm trying to save people's lives, Madam Mayor. Nothing else. I'm just trying to save people's lives. Vote any way you want. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can I put the motion to the vote? All those in favour of the motion, please show. Against? Any abstentions? The motion is lost. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Anderton, which is set out on page 123 of the agenda. Councillor Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll try and make this quick so we can get through the rest of the motions. It's a pleasure to bring this motion to Council, something that will affect all of the borough as we enter darker nights and darker evenings now. As we enter those dark evenings and longer nights, it's important to ensure that every resident in this borough can feel safe in that evening and nighttime economy. They need to feel safe and also respected. So there's no getting away from the fact as well that since the pandemic, our hospitality industry and parts of our nighttime economy did take a hit. But we have to recognise almost a third of our workforce are working in the nighttime economy. Many workers, especially women, are increasingly worried about their safety travelling to and from work at night. This is why the Greater Manchester Combined Authority have launched their nighttime economy strategy in April this year in order to support the sector. But I want to bring the focus down to here, into Wigan, Leigh, Ashton, Atherton, all of our district centres, many of which have now thriving and growing nighttime economies, emerging evening time economies as well in some areas, boasting restaurants, a diverse drinking establishments, some offering live music now, and other events in their localities. So we're seeing the growth of this sector, so we must make sure we are supporting it as well. For us here, I want to make sure people feel safe. They have that diversity of establishments, good working conditions, reliable transport, and we've heard tonight about what's happening with the buses as well, coming back under public control. But it's also about effective partnerships working with our council, working with our licensing teams, but also being a part of the development and regeneration of districts. New businesses setting up should feel part of that and take part in it, and have the support, the business support as well that they deserve. All of these factors are connected, they don't stand alone. It's about looking at the full package here. And steps here have been made already in Wigan and Leigh, in particular, to remove the cumulative impact zone, to encourage new businesses, to take away the perception of added red tape. And we want to see more businesses open in that evening and nighttime economy. Why? To diversify that offer, to make sure that we can offer safer establishments, increase footfall in our town centres. But moving on to safety, what's already been done here in the borough? Lots of work has been taking place over the last couple of years. We have safety marshals working in Wigan, Leigh and Atherton, and we're constantly reviewing how those marshals operate. But in Wigan as well, we have taxi marshals working into the late hours of the night, assisting visitors to get into taxis safely and ensuring they're getting licensed taxis. If that's not the case, we need to know about it as well. We've got 74 venues now that have received welfare and vulnerability training as part of the WAVE effort, and we're looking to extend this across 2023 to other establishments around the borough. We've got 74 licensed venues which are also promoting the Asperangela, again to maintain safety for women in the nighttime economy. And again, looking to launch this further, wider and harder as we move into the colder months and Christmas season. We've also got assets such as posters in our licensed venues, drinks mats as well, to raise awareness that you can Asperangela in any of these businesses. And these are free of charge from the council, so trying to promote that safety across that nighttime economy. 68 businesses have also registered for safe places. So again, a further step to ensure we are keeping residents safe across the borough. And we're trying to promote this further and harder as we go forward. We've got a dedicated website promoting safety at night, so if anyone wants more information, I'm happy to direct you to that, but go to our website, type in Wigan Council Safety at Night. 90 premises have also taken part in El Savvy training to make sure that they get 5-star ratings so they can say we are a safe place, we take care of our customers as well. And that's what we want to promote. Good landlords, good nighttime economy venues, able to then make people feel safe. They'll come out and start supporting our nighttime economy as well. There's a whole raft of other things that are going on as well, such as spiking posters, regular social media posts if anyone follows Wigan Council, and I encourage you to also share those. We've also heard tonight from Councillor Prescott around the purple flag accreditation, so I won't go over that anymore. So this motion is about shouting louder, shouting harder about what is on offer, but also asking Wigan Council today to go further and as best we can to show leadership across Greater Manchester in the Greater Manchester Nighttime Economy Strategy. We've got the makings of some really good stuff here. Really good partnerships now with Greater Manchester Police, now have a dedicated nighttime economy presence and response team. These are things that we've been working for and are now coming to fruition. So as the motion is on the paper, we request that the Council reaffirms its support for the nighttime economy across the borough and across all sectors where possible into that nighttime economy. Look at options where possible to extend, to enhance, to make it better, to guide businesses to the right sources of information so they can make sure their staff and customers are getting home safe during that evening and nighttime economy. But communicate this, ramp up the campaign where possible to make sure that all sectors working in that evening and nighttime economy are aware of the offer. But aim to be, more importantly I think here, aim to be a leader in Greater Manchester. Take the good work, take it into Greater Manchester, but be a listener, because leadership is about listening as well, and bringing that back here so we get the best for our residents in Wigan Borough. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is this motion seconded?
It is, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gallagher, do you wish to speak on the motion or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
Can I reserve the right, please, Madam Mayor, to speak later?
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Steve Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I've been accused of not saying anything nice about this council today, but I always have something nice to say about Councillor Anderton. Again, that was a very passionate, informed motion, and I'm more than happy to support your motion again. And I actually look forward to seeing your career progress in this place. I think your vision is fantastic, and yeah, well done, Councillor Anderton.
Thank you. Councillor Callahan, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everybody. As a previous pub manager and having spent time with my parents as publicans, I fully understand the fears and concerns that have been part of my life for many years. Today, my family is still involved in our hospitality sector in all our towns. Life in the 70s and 80s was very different from today. We do see more health and safety, more training of staff and awareness out on the streets with wardens and taxis and bus staff. We now have rapid response teams from GMP if needed, and it shows we have moved away from the days of drunken brawls and serious attacks. That's not saying they've all gone away, but they are far less. Women and young girls have been concerned about travel at night for some time now, whether it may be coming home from work or from a night out. National data shows us that 57% of women do not feel safe using public transport at night. 84% of women say they feel unsafe waiting for transport after dark, whether that is a train, a bus or a taxi. Experiences such as verbal harassment, stalking and sexual assaults are all too common, and we need to discuss these issues to help protect. I am thrilled to be one of Unite the Union's ambassadors to the latest campaign named Get Me Home Safely. This campaign is moving across the country in councils, including Greater Manchester, where I will be attending some meetings. Within Greater Manchester, this campaign is one of many great initiatives that are either up and running or in the early stages to protect our nighttime economy. There are multiple partners working with Sasha Lord, the Czar of Greater Manchester Nighttime Economy Advisor, with other ideas like Ask for Angela, the bar mats ideas with vital information on, and drinks covers and bottle toppers to prevent spiking. I have found that in Wigan we show our strengths by being involved in such partnerships, and we work well together. Listening to staff from hospitality, retail and manufacturing companies, we need to grab this for our town and lead as we always do. I would love to showcase what Wigan already do now and become a leading voice, and eventually, please let us be the first town hall in Greater Manchester to sign up to this campaign. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I now invite Councillor Anderton to sum up.
Thank you, Madam. I think everything's been said. Thank you.
Can I put this motion to the vote, please? All those in favour of the motion, please vote. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Raymond, which is set out on page 123 of the agenda. Councillor Raymond. I'll just ask for some legal on that, please. Janet.
Sorry, Councillor Holton, can I just clarify? Are you referring to the last motion, or are you referring to the motion from Councillor Raymond? Right, okay, thanks. I just need to clarify. I'll just continue with the advice, Madam Mayor, if that's all right. We scrutinise each motion when they are received to make sure that they meet with the Constitution, and this was deemed appropriate and met with the Constitution.
Yeah, this motion is fit for debate. It's on the agenda, so we'll continue, Councillor Holton, but thank you. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity to speak. Madam Mayor, this motion is as much about dignity and respect as it is about need, financial hardship, and doing the right thing for our struggling families with school-going children. Madam Mayor, there is nothing more heartbreaking than seeing a child in isolation, being bullied, being left out, or even excluded from school for wearing an ill-fitted, unclean, or incorrect uniform only because their parents cannot afford to buy them a new one. Madam Mayor, I think we can all agree that school uniform plays a valuable role in one's school life. It fosters a sense of school community. It instills pride. It empowers student focus. It improves students' focus and enhances discipline and equality. It ensures pupils from all races and backgrounds feel included. It protects pupils from the peer pressure to dress in a certain way. But Madam Mayor, on the other hand, we'll also agree that the cost of school uniform has long been recognised as a source of financial and emotional stress for families living on a low income. This issue is more critical for single-parent families and families with more than one school-going child. The issue has become more acute recently with the cost of living going up. The cost of school uniforms, especially branded items and items with school logos on, that families must buy from exclusive suppliers, is putting unnecessary financial burden on parents, creating shame and guilt in pupils whose parents simply can't afford it. It's putting children from poorer families at a disadvantage even before the school day starts. Madam Mayor, when I'm talking about affordability, I'm not talking about children who are on free school meals or children whose families are in receipt of benefits. I am talking about families who do not qualify for any benefit. I am talking about parents who used to be able to afford these uniforms but can't anymore because of the rising prices, increasing rents, hikes in interest rates, and increases in fuel prices. I am talking about families who are not sure if they qualify for any help at all or not. And Madam Mayor, I am talking about families who are too embarrassed to tell others they are facing financial hardship. Madam Mayor, according to a recent research by Children's Society, parents spend on average £337 per year on school uniforms for each secondary school child and £315 on each primary school child. Coats, bags, and school shoes were the most expensive items for both primary and secondary schools. Madam Mayor, I believe I believe that parents shouldn't have to think about the cost of school uniforms when sending their children to schools. Schools should keep the use of branded items to a minimum and ensure that their uniform supplier arrangements give the highest priority to cost and value for money. Schools should also ensure that second-hand uniforms are available for parents to acquire and information is displayed clearly on their website. And more importantly, Madam Mayor, wherever possible, schools should provide the logos and allow parents to stitch or glue these logos on uniforms. Madam Mayor, government's response on this issue has been too little, too late. A private member's bill introduced by Mike Amesbury, a Labour MP, eventually won government support and became a law recently, which is a step in the right direction, but government must do more to support struggling families who are being priced out of education just because they can't afford to kit out their children in correct uniforms. Madam Mayor, I am aware that locally a lot of schools are doing everything in their capacity to keep the prices of school uniforms to a minimum, and I want to thank them. I want to thank our local charities, swap shops, and compassionate parents and teachers who are providing used items to families in need. But today, I want to redouble our commitment in this chamber to children and families across the borough who are struggling financially, and I would urge our local schools, primary and secondary, community and faith schools, and our academies to urgently review their school uniform policy, especially with regards to branded uniforms and items with logos, to provide a much-needed relief to struggling families in the face of current financial crisis. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bullen, do you wish to speak now or reserve your
Reserve the right, thank you.
Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Edward Hulton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was the next one, you're right. I preempted that one, didn't I? I'm grateful that you didn't politicise it. Well done. Just so we're all aware, I don't get to speak to members of the Cabinet, by the way. Personally, I remember when I was young, it was always a struggle for paying for school uniform. And apparently I used to walk down the street and throw my school hat over a fence every day. I've always been an irritating little child. So I completely understand what's been said. A law's been passed. I don't even understand why schools would be demanding named brands. I mean, they don't that I'm aware of. A couple of years ago, I was involved in an issue in a Warrington school, and there was no name brands issues involved. It was just what they wanted people to wear, which were pretty weird, by the way. So I don't understand this motion at all. Everybody wants to have affordable uniforms. I mean, also people want to have houses that aren't riddled with black mould, you know. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bullen, do you wish to speak?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just very briefly, because I think Councillor Raymond has really well articulated the issues, and I am supporting the motion that schools have that letter sent to them. The cost of living crisis has brought the cost of school uniforms into very sharp focus, and it should not be so badly impacting on families that children maybe don't go to school because of the embarrassment, because of the indignity that has been described. So I'd be very surprised if there is anyone in this chamber that cannot support this motion for the sake of our families. Thank you.
Councillor Raymond, I invite you to sum up. Apologies, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just really a bit of clarification. I know someone didn't want this debate in the chamber, but I welcome it. I think it's long overdue. I'm sure I'm not the only lad here that went to school with the old school grants and the plastic shoes and that sort of stuff. But I don't know about the name brand issue, but what's clear, and I won't name any schools, is that some shops are providing cheaper school uniforms, but the school can veto that. I don't know if that's correct. So will this motion address that? Because that's it. The other thing that you've touched on in this motion is like whether we could do anything, you know, you got the cost of the actual uniform, but the shoes, I mean, I buy my grandkids the shoes on all the game. It's really, you know, for some families, it's just 60 quid for a pair of 5-year-old shoes. So it was just that clarification. I'll certainly be supporting the motion. Will it address that issue where a school can actually veto where the mother, if you like, or the father for that matter, wants to get the clothes from? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond, if you wish to sum up on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, I do agree with you that schools have some powers, but still we are seeing that a lot of schools are requiring children to wear branded items and specifically going for very exclusive suppliers. And I want to recommit, I want to strengthen our commitment from this Labour group that schools, we write to schools to review their school uniform policy again. I am more than happy to have this conversation outside this chamber about how we can support with shoes and any specific items that we can, that are in our capacity to do. Councillor Hulton, it is an issue. If it wasn't an issue, the government wouldn't be passing this law to actually ask schools to reduce the cost of their uniforms. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I put this motion to the vote, please? All those in favour of the motion, please. Any against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Gerard, which is set out on page 124 of the agenda. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, let's get the right piece of paper. Yes, I submitted a motion, and I'm quite happy to see work has already begun with what the motion's about. But I'd like to, if I can expand on the motion that I did put in, because obviously you only get so many words. It's taken the death of a 2-year-old boy to bring this to light about the actual state of some housing stock nationally. I get that, not just locally. It's a national issue. But some of the excuses made by Rochdale Council ring true what I hear in this chamber. You know, paint over it, open a window, it's condensation. You know, we've got to get to the bottom of these, and this is why I said we need to treat, basically, when any members' inquiry that come in for mould, damp or something like that, it's got to be treated as an emergency now. We can't just keep fobbing it off and, you know, saying open a window, we'll put you some more vents in, we'll do this. We've got to find the problem. There's all different kind of damp, not just condensation. We've got penetrating damp. That usually comes from the gutters being faulty, or the rendering faulty, or the brickwork. Rising damp, where the damp-proof course has failed, or in the new builds, it's not been installed properly. There's a bridging issue with the damp, or very poor made brickwork. We see that quite a lot in new houses. The brickwork isn't up to standard. So the outcome really I'd like to see going forward and add to the scheme what you're putting forward, Councillor Gambles, is identify historic mould cases and damp cases in our stock. Investigate and repair any faults found instantly. Maybe retrofit forced ventilation units. You get them online for £300 ago, and this would, especially in the flats where there's not much scope to put things in, but we do see a lot of damp. The ventilation isn't adequate. Maybe retrofit the forced ventilation units. And like I said earlier, treat reports of mould and damp as an emergency. And hopefully get someone to visit within 24 to 48 hours and start the ball rolling. Not the case where we see it on hold. And I mean, I've had a case where it's been on hold for a couple of months. It's not good enough. Before anything, the health of our residents should come before projects, what we've been speaking about earlier, the budget. We've got to make sure this is our #1 priority. And I really hope you all agree with me on that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is the motion seconded? Councillor Edward Hulton, do you wish to speak on the motion or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I'll reserve, please.
Okay. Do any members wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Cunliffe?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sort of everything Stuart said there. For me, the motion's a bit redundant, is it? Because just exactly what it says, it's asking the council to do exactly what we're already doing. I think what's more important is that we get a report back on the issues, you know, of the investigations and what the actions are going to be. And I think that's the most important thing. So I'm asking really whether Councillor Gerard would be prepared to withdraw this motion as it stands, because it's just asking us to do what we're already doing, but reassure him that there will be a full report coming back for a future council. They'll be going to Cabinet and future council on all the issues he's raising here and the issues he's raised in his speech.
Councillor Gerard? Councillor Gerard, would you be willing to withdraw the motion?
I think I've stated it quite clearly that it needs to be debated. There is other elements as well as on the report about just on the motion, rather than just investigating it. There is other options on there about making it an emergency, retrofitting the forced ventilation units, etc. Thank you.
Right, we'll continue with the motion. Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is a serious issue, and it's an issue that we must all work together on. And the biggest problem for me is the number of inspectors that we've got. Roughly, I think we have about 3 inspectors of what I know about. I think we should do a big recruiting. Madam Mayor? Are we okay? You'd have to call a point of order. I'm in the middle of speaking. I've not breached any rules, so can I carry on, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, continue,
yeah, thank
please.
you. So for me, this is something that we should get on top of. I'm not going to pick a fight because it's too serious for that, or play politics. If we can get more inspectors, I think we should actually have an inspector per, you know, like the old towns, so for Ashton and Bryn or Hinley and Hinley Green. So we should roughly have 10 to 12 inspectors, because we have up to 1,000 now. Is it about 1,000 council properties per ward, would you all say? So even 1 or 2, so then you're talking even 1 still to 20,000. Maybe it should be 1 per ward. And what we're doing at the moment is we're overloading our inspectors. Now, I know the inspectors, and they work tirelessly. They really do, Madam Mayor. If we give them the support that they can, we also submit these as emergency inquiries. I think the members' system is getting better and better by the week. And if you look at the improvements this council made with homelessness, again, I'm complimenting you, Keith, 2 in 1 line, and we put that into the same efforts as the mould, I'm sure we can get on top of it. But support on this occasion, just support the motion. Let's support the motion. Let's all work together on it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brayley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we need to go again at these contractors. Because I'm very confused here. We've put new roofs on our council houses, we've had new windows, we've had new kitchens, we've had new bathrooms. What else do we need to do to protect our houses from damp? I mean, you keep borrowing money and jobs keep getting done and you keep bragging how good you are. So it's got to be the contractors, whoever's doing the job. Now, is there a guarantee on the work to get them back? Why are we diversifying from the source of what's happening? A builder, whoever's coming in and doing the work. Now, obviously, I know you're replacing boilers now on pensioners' bungalows. You've got British Gas involved. Good move or bad move, I don't know. You're paying for quality now, so you're going to paying a lot of money. British Gas, whoever's got these people in, you know what I mean? We know we'll get a good job off them, but what is the cost going to be to us now? But I'll tell you what, I'd like to go and see them houses, what Ed showed me today. I'd love to go and see them houses with an housing officer and give my support. Can we arrange that, Ed? Indeed we can. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gambles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Gerard, I think one of the things I did actually think was, is this in the right place? Because it's more of a question than a motion. Because everything that you've talked about and everything that people have mentioned, we're doing. And we're actually on with it. We've been doing this since 2019. We've not solved everything. We've not gone everywhere. There's still things that we need to do. But I can take you through it, and we've got a response, but we're already doing it. And it's because we absolutely take responsibility for making sure our tenants are safe and comfortable. I've mentioned that before. And we're really committed to it, and it is a priority. And we're really deeply saddened by the death of Ishaq Awab, and we send his condolences to his family. It's a terrible situation to be in. But this council didn't have to wait for a coroner's report to do stuff. It was already doing it. We were already acting. We were already improving our homes. We've been doing a significant amount of work following the completion of the Housing Needs Assessment, I've mentioned it before, and the Housing Stock Survey in 2019. We've also got a robust, decent home standard that we're actually adhering to, and we've reviewed and improved that at the beginning of the year. And there's the Quality Homes Board holds these teams to account. Our asset management strategy already targets investment in our properties, and we have a proactive approach onto repairs and focusing on early intervention. So some of these things are actually already happening, but we're still at the beginning of some of the process. And really, in this chamber, it's great that you are the eyes and ears of what's actually happening outside within the residents' places. So we're very grateful for that. But the other thing you've got to remember, we've also got a very dedicated housing advisory panel, which is made up of tenants and elected members. And these individuals are extremely committed and passionate about ensuring our tenants get a good service and are listened to. And they're very robust in their scrutiny, let me tell you, of the services, and frequently make suggestions and also provide solutions. So I'm sure, well, actually, you've got some connections with the Conservative MP for Lee, because as you know, you'll know, probably, Ed, we're already responding to a letter from the Minister for Housing and Levelling Up, and we're also responding to a letter from the regulator about what we have done and what we're doing. They're asking for information on the damp and the mould and the remedial action that's required. And the government has not provided any financial support for some of this, so we're needing to actually get it out of the housing revenue account, hence the actual breaking point of the housing revenue account. For example, it used to cost around 9k to actually get a house into working order, to order. But that was before the inflation. Now it's costing more. We're talking about the cost of materials, availability of parts, cost of labour.
Suspension of standing orders under 10k for the purpose of finishing this and hearing the final motion that's on the council agenda. Can we go straight to the vote then?
But it's not a motion. I don't understand what it's saying.
continue. Just ask the deputy leader. Deputy Leader, are you invoking the guillotine? Suspend this. Right, okay. Is it seconded? Seconded. And can we vote on that, please? To carry on past the guillotine.
You spoke a bit too soon there, didn't you? Yeah. Can I continue? Is that all right?
Carry on, Councillor.
Carry on.
Carry on,
I don't
Councillor.
think I ever come to this chamber when I'm not interrupted. Is there any time when I actually stand up and speak and I'm not interrupted? But this is fine. It's actually I know. All right. It's all right. Okay. Yeah, fine. Okay. So, all right then. Right. Right. Just I've nothing much more to say, to be honest, other than we're already on with it. We're already moving forward with it. We're doing a substantial amount of work already, and it's something that's undergoing. And I think what Keith suggested in respect of providing the report and coming back to chamber, you'll find that we're actually doing the majority of stuff that you're already talking about and just discussing now. So thank you.
Councillor James Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think we can all agree that one death from black mould in this day and age is one too far. And I'm glad to see that we're all in agreement of this motion. And I look forward to that side of the chamber supporting this side of the chamber for once. But I just want to build on what Councillor Briley said before about the subcontractors and our own workmen, work people going into these council homes. And I think it's imperative that all council staff, all councillors, whether you're in your welfare role, whether you're doing a house visit as a councillor, or you're representing in the council, you should be looking for black mould, and then you should be reporting that to the relevant parts of the council. So what I would like to see is potentially some black mould awareness training for all members of the council to hopefully prevent this happening again in the future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cunliffe.
In view of what's been said, can I refer this to Cabinet to deal with all those other issues, because the actual motion is only repeating something that we're already doing? So in terms of the other things that have been brought up, can I ask it to be referred to Cabinet to come back to a future council meeting?
Can I have a second?
Councillor Cunliffe, yes, you can do that. I've just had legal advice. Yes, you can. Councillor Hulton, would you like to, as seconder, would you like to speak on the motion? Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Deputy Leader for suspending the rules so we can continue to discuss this. And I've spoken to the portfolio holder and I've said, please go running through my list of MEMS to see what you can do. I don't want to have an argument about this. It's not going to help. But what I would like to do...
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Hulton. As it's been referred to Cabinet, there's no more debate in it, I'm afraid. Okay, so could I ask you to sit down and we'll...
Well, I don't have a choice, do I, really?
No, not really. Thank you. Apologies for that. Yes?
Ed, we did have a conversation, but I asked for your permission to actually look into the cases that you submitted. You didn't actually ask me.
Councillor Gambles, I'm sorry, that's not a point of order. Okay. Right, we'll continue with motion 5, the last motion of the evening. Thank you. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Bullen. No. Sorry, it's already gone through. Thank you. Thank you. A motion has been submitted by Councillor Bullen, which is set out on page 124 of the agenda. Councillor Bullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really sorry, but this is important, and I know you're all a bit fed up and weary with it all. Shall we do what we do in schools when the kids get fed up and they've got to refocus? If you feel like a shake or a jump around or just to, get in there and we're off. I'll try and be brief, but I want to explain what this is all about. As you know, and this is why it's important, because we are all corporate parents and we have a collective responsibility for providing the best possible support for children and young people who are looked after by the local authority and who are leaving the care system. This includes how we as a corporate family continue that support, care and ambition for care experienced young people after they leave home and gain independence. In Wigan, we have a very effective deal for our care leavers. I was going to give you some highlights. I'll trust you to all look it up on the website, the deal for care leavers and what we actually provide in Wigan, and it's impressive. But we are determined to do more, and we can, by supporting this motion that proposes that every decision made in this council and every policy we set should consider the needs of our children and young people in our care and those who have left care by placing an additional characteristic in our equality impact assessments. This will give formal recognition and make sure that all our decisions have to take into account the needs and impact on all those who are care experienced. Any commissioning or procurement agreements, any policies and decisions will have to consider the impact on care experienced people. Just in case you're wondering what it is, it's just as we do now for protected characteristics such as age, gender, disability, beliefs, race and so on under the Equality Act 2010. But currently the law does not include care experience as a protected characteristic, but there is a strong weight of argument that it should do so, and significant lobbying is going on. And a recent independent review of children's social care commissioned by the government reported back to say that to overcome the discrimination, the stigma and the prejudice that those who are care experienced face in their day-to-day lives, government should make care experience a protected characteristic. However, with this government in such disarray, what have we had? 2 prime ministers, 4 chancellors and a partridge in a pear tree probably as well in recent time. That's the one. So we can't imagine anything happening anytime soon. So that's why I'm proposing this motion, so that this council acts now to be the best corporate parents we can be and make sure that some of our most vulnerable children and young people are happy, healthy and safe, feel listened to and have the maximum opportunities to be ambitious. I propose the motion to look after children and young people and care leavers as an additional characteristic in all our equality impact assessments to determine the impact on care experienced people. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is the motion seconded? Councillor Sweeney, do you wish to speak on the motion or reserve your right to speak until later in the debate?
I'll speak now, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for inviting me to second the motion, which I'm more than pleased to do. I absolutely second the motion to place looked after children and young people and care leavers as an additional characteristic in our equality impact assessments, because, as chair of our corporate parenting board, I believe it's really important that we consider the impact of all our policies and decisions that are made in this council for some of our most vulnerable people. We want to make it easier for them to be ambitious and fulfil their aspirations, which may mean making some reasonable adjustments in a similar way that we're required to do under current equality legislation. For example, that might be about providing the appropriate access to our buildings and services or respecting different cultures and beliefs. Care experienced people tell us that they often experience discrimination. They may feel stigmatised, undervalued, expectations of them by others may be low, and there may be a lack of respect towards them. They need and deserve better and we as a council and corporate parents are well placed to make a difference. Although, as already mentioned, there is currently no legislation for a protected characteristic, it does not stop us from doing what is right for our children and young people in care and our care leavers. We can be at the forefront both nationally and in Greater Manchester by voting to place an additional characteristic in the Council's Equality Impact Assessments to determine the impact of the decisions that we make on care experienced people. I am, therefore, Madam Mayor, pleased to second the motion and I would urge all members to support it. Thank you.
Do any other members wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Flynn.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll be very brief because I realise it's very late. Just to emphasise, there are 9 protected characteristics that we as a council have to take into account under legislation, but there are an additional 3 characteristics that we as Wigan Council have chosen to take into account with our activities. The additional ones are for carers, are for armed forces personnel, and also for socio-economic disadvantage. Adding care leavers and care experienced people to that list, I think, would be a really welcome addition. And just to say, it's a great shame that Councillor Brearley has left already and Councillor Jones has left, because when they asked why is Wigan Council such a good council, why is Wigan Council the best council, it's because we do things like this. We go above and beyond. We consider the most vulnerable in everything that we do, and I'm very proud to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Bullen, do you wish to sum up on the motion?
Nothing further, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can I put the motion to the vote? All those in favour of the motion, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you. That concludes the business tonight. Have a safe journey home.